Chapter 1, Transfer Student Chemistry class always started the same way. Too bright, too orderly, too convinced it mattered more than it did. The lights hummed faintly overhead, a sterile kind of insistence that made everything feel overexposed. Rows of desks sat in perfect alignment, like obedience had been built into the room itself. Even the whiteboard looked too clean, like it erased things too well. Like nothing that happened here was allowed to leave residue. I was halfway through pretending to take notes when the teacher stopped speaking mid-sentence. A pause. Not long enough to be dramatic, just long enough to be noticed. The kind of interruption that doesn't break the moment but bends it slightly out of shape. Papers rustled, not loudly, but enough to signal that something had shifted in the room's gravity. "We have a new transfer student," she announced. That was all it took. Chairs straightened, pens froze midline, even the air seemed to lean forward, curious in that shallow, restless way people get when something new enters a space they've grown bored of. "He'll be joining us for the rest of the term. His name is Rory." The name didn't land heavily. It didn't echo. It didn't demand attention. It simply arrived, like something already decided long before it was spoken. The door opened, and the room changed temperature without asking anyone's permission. It wasn't a dramatic drop, not cold, just different. Like the air had been replaced with something that behaved almost the same, but not quite. He stepped in. No hesitation, no pause at the doorway. Most new students did that, hovered for a second in the room, tried to figure out where they fit. Rory didn't. He moved like the room had already accounted for him. Like his presence wasn't an addition, but a correction. Straw blonde hair, slightly uneven, catching the fluorescent light in soft threads. It didn't look styled. It didn't look careless either. It looked like it existed outside of those categories entirely, like intention didn't apply to it the way it did to everything else. And his eyes, violet. Not bright, not theatrical. Deep. The kind of depth that didn't invite attention so much as absorb it. Looking at them felt less like seeing something and more like approaching it. A couple students in the back snorted. "Rory?" someone said. "That's not a real name. Sounds like a pet hamster," another voice added. Laughter followed, quick, easy. The kind of laughter that doesn't come from humour so much as habit. It spread across the room like it always did, light, careless, feeding off itself without needing to be good. Rory didn't react. Not even a flicker, no shift in posture, no tightening of expression, nothing. The sound passed through him like it hadn't found anything to land on. And somehow, that made the laughter feel misplaced. Not wrong, just irrelevant, like it had been directed at something that wasn't there. The teacher cleared her throat, reclaiming control of the room. "You can take the empty seat near the centre." He nodded once. No verbal acknowledgement, no hesitation, just movement. He walked forward. And somewhere in the middle of that walk, I realised something had shifted in me too. I was paying attention, not intentionally, not curiously, just automatically. Like my focus had been redirected without asking. It wasn't attraction, not yet. It wasn't even interest in the normal sense. It felt closer to recognition without context, like seeing a word in a language you don't speak and still understanding that it means something important. Each step he took was quiet, but not small. There was a kind of precision to it, like every movement had already been decided before it happened. He passed my row, and for a fraction of a second his gaze shifted, not fully, not enough to call it a look, just a slight adjustment, enough that I felt it, like a calculation brushing past me. Then it was gone. He kept walking, sat down, opened his notebook, and just like that the room tried to return to normal. It failed, not obviously. The teacher resumed the lesson. Words filled the air again. Something about chemical bonds, reactions, stability, the usual rhythm, the usual structure. But underneath it, something didn't settle. Like a second layer of silence had formed beneath the noise. I tried to focus, I really did. But the words slid past me, slipping out of place before they could stick. My attention kept drifting, back to him. Not because he was doing anything disruptive. Because he wasn't. He was writing, slowly, deliberately, each line placed with a kind of care that made the page feel less like notes and more like construction, like he wasn't recording information, he was arranging it, building something out of it. At one point his pen paused, just for a moment. Then he spoke, not loudly, not to interrupt, just enough for the room to catch it. "Did you know pulsars rotate hundreds of times per second?" A few heads turned. Confusion flickered. Mild annoyance. He didn't look up from his notebook. "If you were near one, the gravitational forces would destroy you instantly," he continued calmly. A pause. Then, softer, "But it keeps spinning anyway," the teacher frowned. "Rory, that's not part of today's lesson." Now he looked up, and something in the room tightened. Not visibly, but unmistakably, like everyone suddenly became aware of the space they occupied, and how easily it could be disrupted. "I know," he said. No apology, no defiance, just a statement. Clean, complete, unbothered by whether it was accepted. Then he looked back down and kept writing. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't, because after that moment the room didn't fully recover, it continued. But something had been displaced, attention felt off-center, like it had been nudged slightly out of alignment and didn't know how to correct itself. I caught myself watching him again and again, not because I understood him, because I didn't, and that felt important in a way I couldn't explain. The bell rang eventually. Sharp, abrupt, like a door slamming shut on something unfinished. People stood. Chairs scraped. Voices returned to their usual volume. The room dissolved into movement. Normal, familiar, forgettable. He closed his notebook, slipped it into his bag, stood. For a second I thought he would leave like everyone else, just another body folding into the hallway current. But he didn't rush. He paused at the edge of his desk. His gaze swept the room again. Not searching, not curious, just aware. And this time it lingered closer, near me. Not long, not enough to call attention to it, just enough to feel intentional. Then he turned and walked out, like he had never needed the room in the first place. I stayed seated longer than I should have. Pen still in my hand, notes unfinished, thoughts detached from anything written on the page. Outside, the hallway filled the noise. Life resumed, uninterrupted. But inside me, something had shifted. Not loudly, not clearly, just enough to leave a trace. Like a thread I hadn't noticed before, quietly pulling my attention in a direction I hadn't chosen. And for the first time that day, I realized I would be watching for him again, even if I didn't know why yet. Lunch hour changed the school's personality. Before it, everything felt contained, like the day had rules it actually followed. After it, those rules loosened, stretched thin under the weight of noise and movement. Voices spilled into the halls, trays clattered like loose percussion, laughter bounced off lockers with nowhere to settle. It should have felt familiar. It didn't. Not entirely. Something from earlier still lingered, quiet and unresolved, like a thought that refused to finish forming. I should have gone to my usual table. I didn't. Instead, I drifted. Not aimlessly, but not with intention either. My eyes moved before I decided where to look, scanning faces, tables, corners of the cafeteria like I had misplaced something I didn't remember losing. And then I found him. Rory. He was sitting alone near the window. Not isolated in the way people usually are when they sit alone. Not withdrawn. Not avoided. Just separate. Like the rest of the room existed on one layer, and he occupied another that happened to overlap it. Sunlight filtered through the glass behind him, catching in his hair. It didn't glow. It didn't shine. It refracted, breaking into soft strands of pale gold that looked almost deliberate, like light itself had decided to stay a little longer than it should have. He ate slowly, not distracted, not absent, deliberate, each movement clean, measured, without waste. Like even something as ordinary as eating followed a structure I couldn't see. I told myself to keep walking, to pass by, to let the moment dissolve into the rest of the day like it should. I didn't. My steps slowed, adjusted, shifted direction just slightly, enough to bring me closer without admitting I meant to. Up close, it felt different, sharper, not heavier, more defined, like the space around him had clearer edges than everything else in the room. He noticed me before I spoke. That much was obvious. His eyes lifted at exactly the moment I reached the table. Violet met mine, calm, still, uninterrupted by the noise surrounding us. "Hi," I said. The word came out thinner than I intended, like it didn't fully belong to me. He tilted his head slightly, not confusion, not curiosity, more like confirmation. "Hello," he replied. No hesitation, no friction, just a clean, even tone that made conversation feel like it was missing something I couldn't identify. I stood there for a second too long, aware of it, unable to correct it. because I hadn't planned anything past that first word. Then his gaze dropped briefly to my tray. "You're not sitting," he said. Not a question, just an observation. I blinked. I wasn't sure if I should. A pause, small, measured. Then, "You already are." That didn't make sense, not logically, not socially, but something about the way he said it, like the decision had already been made somewhere I hadn't noticed, made my body move before my thoughts caught up. The chair scraped softly as I sat down across from him. The moment I did, the rest of the cafeteria dimmed slightly at the edges, not visually, just in awareness. Like everything outside this table had been pushed half a step further away. I became aware of small things, the way his fingers rested lightly against the edge of the tray, the precise angle of his wrist as he adjusted his fork, the stillness in his posture that didn't read as rigid, just intentional. "You're new," I said. Immediately I regretted it. Too obvious, too empty. "I am," he replied, and that was it. No elaboration, no expansion, just the answer, complete in a way that made follow-up feel unnecessary. I pushed anyway. "Where did you transfer from?" A pause, barely there. "Somewhere else," he said. I stared at him. He didn't smile, didn't react. But something in his expression suggested he understood exactly how unhelpful that answer was and chose it deliberately. "You're not very talkative," I said before I could stop myself. He set his fork down, looked at me fully, not sharply, not aggressively, just directly. "I talk when it is necessary," he said. "And when is it necessary?" His gaze lingered, not pressing, not pulling, just holding. "When something changes," he said quietly. That should have felt vague, meaningless even. But it didn't. It landed somewhere deeper than it should have. Like the sentence had weight I couldn't see yet. A group nearby burst into laughter. Someone dropped a tray behind us, metal clanging sharply against tile. The room surged with noise again, but it didn't fully reach this table. Not the same way. I realized I still hadn't eaten. My hands were still, my attention fixed. "So," I said, forcing normalcy back into my voice, "do you like it here so far?" He considered that. Not theatrically, not performatively, like the question actually required evaluation. "I haven't decided," he said. "That's a weird answer." "It is an accurate answer." There it was again, that slight shift at the corner of his mouth. Not quite a smile, more like he understood humour conceptually, but didn't fully participate in it. I should have looked away. I didn't. There was something about the way he existed that made everything else feel slightly overexposed. Like the cafeteria lights were too bright, the voices too loud, the world too eager to prove itself real, and he didn't need to. At some point, I noticed my hand resting too close to his side of the table, close enough that if either of us moved, we would touch. The thought arrived quietly, uninvited, and then happened. Not dramatically, not intentionally. He reached for his drink at the same time I adjusted my tray. Fingers brushed, brief, accidental. But the moment it happened, the air shifted, not physically, not visibly, but undeniably. Something tightened, like awareness itself had snapped into focus. He didn't pull away immediately. Neither did I. It lasted a second longer than it should have. Then he withdrew his hand, calmly, controlled, like nothing unusual had occurred, but his gaze stayed on mine, just a fraction longer than before. "You notice small things," he said softly. I swallowed. "What does that mean?" "It means you register change quickly," he replied. "Most people don't." I let out a small breath, trying to ground the moment. "It was just an accident." "I know," he said, but the way he said it didn't close the moment. It deepened it, like the word accident didn't fully apply. The bell rang then. Sharp, intrusive, pulling the room back into motion. Chairs scraped, voices shifted. The fragile stillness at the table fractured instantly. He stood, collected his things with the same precise economy, no wasted motion, no hesitation. Before he left, he paused beside the table, looked down at me. "I will see you in class," he said. Not a question, not an assumption, a certainty. Then he turned, walked away, blended into the moving crowd without actually becoming part of it. I stayed seated, longer than I should have, watching the space he had just occupied like it might still explain something if I looked hard enough. It didn't, but something inside me didn't settle, didn't reset, like the moment hadn't ended, just moved somewhere else I couldn't see yet, and without fully deciding to, I knew I would follow it. The hallway outside chemistry felt louder than it should have, not louder in volume, sharper, Every sound carried an edge now, lockers slamming like punctuation marks, footsteps cutting across tile in uneven rhythms, voices overlapping without ever quite blending. It all moved too fast, too loosely, like the building itself had lost its sense of pacing. And through all of it, my mind kept circling back. Lunch, the brief touch, the pause that followed it, the way Rory had looked at me, not confused, not surprised, but aware, like something had been confirmed. I told myself it didn't mean anything. My body didn't listen. When I reached the classroom, he was already there. Of course, Rory didn't arrive. He occupied. Same seat, same posture, same stillness that didn't feel passive. But this time, something was different. He wasn't just writing, he was structuring. At first glance, it looked like notes, lines, symbols, fragments of the lesson arranged across the page. But the longer I looked, the less it resembled anything familiar. There was a pattern to it, not visual, not something I could trace with my eyes, but something in the way his pen moved, deliberate, precise, almost mechanical in its consistency, made it feel like he wasn't recording information, he was organising it, like the page wasn't paper, like it was a surface he was mapping something onto. I sat down slowly, aware of him before he acknowledged me, and then he did. A brief glance, quick, measured, but enough to reconnect the thread from earlier. "You're early," I said quietly. It wasn't a good opening. It wasn't even necessary, but silence felt too heavy to leave alone. "I didn't change my timing," he replied. That answer landed strangely. Too precise, too literal. Like the statement wasn't about today, like it applied to something broader, something I hadn't seen yet. The teacher began speaking again. Reaction rates, equations, numbers forming and dissolving across the board like they were trying to convince us they mattered. I tried to focus. I failed immediately. Because beside me, Rory's pen stopped mid-line. Not abruptly, not like a mistake. Just paused, held in place as if something else had taken priority. Then, without looking up, he spoke. "Do you ever feel like people assume stability is normal?" I blinked, turned slightly toward him. "That's a weird question." "It is observational," he said, same tone, same calm, like the strangeness of the question wasn't a flaw, just a detail. I hesitated. "I mean, yeah, people like things stable." A faint pause. "They mistake repetition for stability." He corrected. I frowned. "Is there a difference?" That made him look at me. Not a glance, not a passing acknowledgement. A full shift of attention, and something about it felt like stepping slightly out of alignment with the rest of the room. "Yes," he said. "Repetition is the illusion of predictability. Stability is resistance to change." I stared at him. "That sounds like philosophy." "It is observation," he said again. The teacher's voice blurred into the background. Not gone, just irrelevant, like the lesson had slipped into a lower layer of importance and something else taken its place. Then it happened. Not dramatic, not visible, just a shift. Subtle, but immediate, a presence at the edge of awareness. It's like someone standing too still in a place designed for movement. I looked toward the door. Nothing, just hallway light spilling in, empty space. But my skin prickled anyway, a quiet, instinctive reaction that didn't wait for confirmation. Rory didn't look up, didn't react visibly, but his voice lowered slightly. "They are closer today," he said. My stomach tightened. "Who?" A pause, long enough to matter. "People who collect anomalies," he said. The words didn't land like a joke. They didn't even land like something dramatic. They settled, heavy, uncomfortable, real in a way I didn't know how to argue with. I forced a breath. "That sounds like something you made up." "It is not," he said. No emphasis, no insistence. Just truth, stated without needing belief. I tried to laugh. It didn't come out right. "So what does that mean for me?" This time, he hesitated longer. His pen rested motionless against the page, like the answer required precision. "It means," he said slowly, "you are now part of what they will notice." The room felt colder. Not physically, conceptually, like the idea of being observed had changed the shape of the space around me. I tightened my grip on the edge of the desk. "I didn't ask for that." "I know," he said softly. That softness was worse than anything else, because it didn't dismiss it, didn't minimize it. It acknowledged it, and left it there. The bell rang. Sharp, final, cutting the moment in half. People stood, chairs scraped, the room surged back into motion like nothing had changed. But something had. I felt it. Rory stood beside me before I had fully processed it. "I will walk you out," he said. "I didn't ask you to." "I know." And still, he stayed. We moved into the hallway together. The noise returned immediately. But now it felt layered, like there was something beneath it, something quieter, watching. As we walked, I noticed something else. People didn't look at him normally. They looked too long, then looked away too quickly, like something in their instincts told them to disengage before they understood why. It wasn't fear, it was correction, an unconscious adjustment. And then I saw it. At the far end of the hallway, a man standing still, too still, not a student, not a teacher, neutral in a way that didn't belong, like he had removed anything identifiable about himself and left only observation behind. He wasn't doing anything obvious, not moving, not signaling, just watching, but not casually, not curiously, like he was recording. My steps slowed, Rory noticed immediately. "They are here," he said quietly. My voice dropped without meaning to. "That's one of them?" "Yes." The man didn't move, but something in me understood. He knew we had noticed him. Rory shifted slightly, not toward the man, toward me. "Do not look at them directly for too long," he said. "Why?" "Because attention creates confirmation," he replied. "That doesn't make sense. It does to them." We kept walking, but the feeling didn't leave. It followed, close, persistent. Like something had attached itself to the idea of us moving through space. Outside, the air felt colder. Wind pressed lightly against my jacket, tugging at the edges like it wanted to pull me somewhere else. Rory walked beside me. Same pace, same calm. But now, I could feel it. Something beneath that calm. Not panic, not fear. Calculation. Active, running, adjusting. "They will start small," he said. "Small how?" "Questions, patterns, observations disguised as coincidence." I swallowed. "And if that doesn't work?" He didn't answer immediately. For the first time, his silence felt heavy, like it held something he didn't want to say out loud. "They escalate," he said finally. The wind shifted. Subtle, but enough to make the moment feel anchored, real, unavoidable. We stopped near the edge of the school grounds. Not planned, just happened, like something had decided this was where the conversation needed to settle. Rory turned slightly toward me. "If you want to leave," he said quietly, "this is the easiest point to do it." I looked at him, really looked, at the stillness he carried, at the way his presence didn't ask for space but reshaped it, at the violet eyes that didn't push but didn't let anything slip past them either. "I'm not leaving," I said. The words felt immediate, unquestioned, like the decision had been made before I spoke it. A pause. Then he nodded. "I expected that," he said softly. For a moment, nothing moved. Not the wind. Not the space between us, just a quiet, shared understanding settling into place. Then, almost too quiet to catch, he added, "Then we adapt." And somewhere beyond what I could see, something continued watching. Chapter 2, waiting. Rory's at the diner. The sun was already folding itself into the horizon when I stepped out of the last bell's echo, its golden light pooling across the floors of Rosewood High like something spilled and impossible to clean. It clung to lockers, to glass, to the edges of the world, as if the day itself didn't want to leave. I followed Rory. Not casually, not the way you follow a classmate to a shared exit. Every step I took felt deliberate, almost sacred, like I was walking deeper into something I didn't yet understand but already couldn't abandon. A quiet shift had taken root in my life the moment he appeared, and even after a week, it hadn't loosened its grip. His presence wasn't just visible. It was felt. Like gravity that leaned a little closer when he passed, like the low hum of a violin string plucked somewhere behind my ribs, vibrating through bone and thought alike. Concentrate. The words slipped into my mind without crossing the air between us, brushing the edges of my thoughts with startling gentleness. Focus on me, not the surroundings. I inhaled slowly, steadying myself, letting the noise of the hallway dim. Conversations blurred into static. Footsteps dissolved into rhythm. And there he was, clearer than anything else, his awareness threading into mine with quiet precision. It was disorienting and intoxicating. I could feel his curiosity flicker against mine, faint and curious, like he was studying me the way one studies fire. There was amusement too, soft and restrained at my hesitant attempts to meet him in that shared space. And warmth. That was what unsettled me most. He felt alive in a way that made everything else seem dull by comparison. We reached the cafeteria, its usual chaos subdued into scattered pockets of noise. Afternoon light poured through the tall windows, stretching long across empty tables. Most people had already left. The rest lingered in distant corners, their laughter softened by space. Rory sat near the windows. Of course he did. The light seemed to choose him, catching in his straw-blonde hair until it gleamed like spun gold. His violet eyes moved calmly across the room, taking everything in without ever appearing rushed. He didn't belong here, not in the way the rest of us did. I approached slowly, my heartbeat climbing into my throat, each step heavier than the last. Fear tangled with something deeper, something I wasn't ready to name yet. I slid into the seat across from him. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then my hand moved. It wasn't planned. It wasn't calculated. It just happened. My fingers brushed his under the table. He didn't pull away. Instead, there was a shift, subtle, almost imperceptible. A faint bloom of colour touched his cheeks. Not red, but something softer, stranger, purple. It spread like a secret. You can hold my hand whenever you want. The words reached my mind before they reached my ears. I froze. Heat surged into my face, sharp and immediate, my pulse roaring in my ears. But beneath the embarrassment, beneath the fear, there was something else pushing me forward, something braver than I had ever been alone. I leaned across the table and kissed him. It was brief, barely more than a touch, but the world shifted around it, tilting into something fragile and electric. His hands found mine instantly, warm and steady, and the violet blush deepened, glowing faintly in the golden light. That was the moment I knew, not suspected, knew. Rory wasn't human, and somehow that truth didn't push me away, it pulled me closer. We stayed like that until the bell rang again, its sharp sound breaking through the quiet cocoon we had built. Outside, the world resumed its motion, indifferent and unaware. But something else moved too. I felt it before I saw it. A low vibration threading through the edge of Rory's awareness, brushing mine in warning. The black sedan. It was there again, watching, waiting. Rory's hand tightened around mine. Stay calm. The thought came firm this time, edged with urgency. Follow me. We left the cafeteria without drawing attention, slipping through the halls and out into the cooling air. The sun had nearly vanished now, the sky dimming into something softer, quieter. But the world didn't feel quiet. Not anymore. Every sound sharpened, every shadow stretched. And through it all, the thread between us pulsed stronger, guiding me, anchoring me. We crossed the school grounds and moved toward the park behind it, where the grass shimmered faintly under the rising moon. A few distant figures passed along the edges, but the centre lay open and still. We sat on a bench, close. Not touching at first, then our hands brushed again. That same quiet electricity sparked, subtle but undeniable, waking every nerve in my body. I've never felt anything like this, I whispered. My voice betrayed me, trembling despite the calm radiating from him. Connection isn't something you feel often, he replied, his voice soft but certain. It's rare. A pause, but powerful, his fingers intertwined with mine, and ours. I closed my eyes and let him in. Not just his presence, everything. Fragments of perception flickered through me, the world as he sensed it, the edges of motion beyond sight, the faint echo of the sedan's presence lingering like a shadow just out of reach. Fear sparked, sharp and immediate, but it didn't consume me, because it wasn't just mine anymore. I don't want anything to happen to you, I said, quieter now. Honest. He turned slightly, his hand pressing gently against my arm. Then don't worry. The words flowed through me like warmth. Not when we're connected. The bond pulsed, stronger, deeper. And before I could second-guess myself, I leaned in again, kissing him longer this time, letting the moment stretch and settle. His blush deepened, glowing faintly in the dimming light, unreal and beautiful. Then, a shift, subtle but unmistakable, movement at the edges of perception. The threads tightened. Agents, watching, closing in. Rory's grip tightened. We must move. His thoughts pressed into mine, urgent now. Carefully. I nodded, and just like that, the quiet moment shattered into motion. We slipped from the bench and into the shadows, our steps silent, our awareness entwined. The park stretched around us, suddenly vast and uncertain, every rustle of leaves carrying weight. The world had changed again. Only this time, it wasn't just beautiful, it was dangerous. The park did not feel like a park anymore. It felt like a held breath. Every tree stood too still, every shadow too deliberate, as though the night itself had learned how to watch. The air carried the faint scent of damp earth and distant rain, and beneath it all something sharper pulsed at the edges of my awareness. Them. Not seen, but known. Rory's hand never left mine as we moved, his grip steady, grounding, a quiet promise threaded through skin and bone. The connection between us had changed. It was no longer something gentle and exploratory. It was alert, awake, alive in a way that sharpened everything. "Slow your breathing," he murmured, though the words touched my mind before my ears. They're close enough to feel panic. I hadn't realized how fast my heart was racing until he said it. It thundered against my ribs, wild and uncontained, echoing into him through the bond. I tried to steady it. Not for me. For us. The path curved ahead, dipping into a darker stretch where the trees grew thicker, their branches knitting together overhead. Moonlight fractured through the leaves in thin, trembling strands, barely touching the ground. We stepped into it anyway. Because forward was the only direction that still made sense. "They don't see us yet," he continued, his thoughts brushing mine like a calm tide against jagged rock. "But they're mapping, searching patterns. Patterns." The word unsettled me more than it should have. Because we were one. 2 heartbeats, 1 thread. What did we look like from the outside? What did we become? A flicker of unease slipped through me, and instantly he felt it. His thumb traced light across the back of my hand. "Stay with me." Not a command, a tether. I tightened my grip in response. Always. The word formed in my mind before I could question it. We reached the edge of the park where the grass surrendered to pavement, the city rising beyond in muted light and distant motion. Street lamps flickered awake one by one, casting halos that barely touched the spaces between them. And there, across the street, the black sedan. It sat too still, too precise, its surface catching fragments of light like a blade catching the sun. The engine was quiet, but I could feel it through Rory, a low mechanical presence humming beneath everything else, watching, waiting. My breath hitched, Rory's hand tightened, not yet. His thoughts sharpened, cutting clean through the rising fear. We move when they don't expect movement. A door opened, one figure stepped out, then another. They didn't rush, didn't speak loudly. They moved like people who believed time belonged to them. "They think they've already won," I whispered, barely audible. Rory's response came with a flicker of something colder than before. "Then we'll remind them they haven't." The moment stretched, balanced. "Then move." We crossed the street not in a run, but in something quieter, sharper. A glide between seconds. His awareness guided every step, every shift in weight, every angle that kept us just outside their focus. I didn't think. I followed, and somehow that was enough. We slipped between buildings into a narrow alley where the air cooled and the light thinned into scattered reflections on wet concrete. The city pressed closer here, walls rising on either side, trapping sound, bending it into echoes that didn't belong to anything we could see. Behind us, footsteps. Measured, closer. "They've split," I breathed. "Yes." No hesitation, no fear. Only calculation threading through his thoughts like clean lines on glass. "Left," he guided, and I turned before I fully processed it, trusting the pull more than my own instincts. We ducked behind a parked car, the metal still warm from the day, its surface reflecting broken fragments of our shapes. For a moment we stilled, not frozen, poised. I could feel him extending outward, his awareness stretching beyond sight, brushing the edges of movement, mapping positions, predicting paths. "They're trying to box us in," he said softly. My stomach tightened. "How do we stop that?" A pause. Then, quieter. "We don't let them define the space." I didn't fully understand, but I felt what he meant. The connection shifted again, deepened. Not just shared thought now, but shared intent, a merging of direction. "Ready?" he asked, violet eyes catching what little light there was, glowing faintly like something caught between worlds. I nodded. Even with fear threading through me, something else stood taller. Trust. We moved again, faster now, cutting through the alley and emerging onto a side street where neon signs buzzed faintly in storefront windows. The glow painted everything in fractured colour, red bleeding into blue, blue into violet, the world dissolving into something surreal. Our reflections flashed in glass as we passed. 2 figures, too close, too connected, too obvious. "They'll see us here," I said, "only if we linger." His grip shifted, pulling me forward, guiding me through the rhythm of moving bodies. The scattered few still out at this hour, their presence both a shield and a risk. I felt it again, that strange pull, like the world bending slightly around him, around us. A man glanced in our direction, then looked away. Not confused, just uninterested. I blinked. Yes. There was a flicker of strain now beneath his calm. I can blur attention, not fully, just enough. That should have terrified me. Instead, it made my chest tighten with something warmer. You're protecting me. A beat. Then softer. We're protecting each other. The words settled between us like something fragile and unbreakable at once. We turned sharply into another alley, this one narrower, darker, the light barely reaching the ground. A metal ladder climbed the side of the building ahead, leading to a fire escape that zigzagged upward into shadow. Rory stopped. Looked at me. Up. No hesitation. We climbed. The metal was cold now, biting against my palms. Each rung a small test of balance and speed. Below, the city stretched, distant and watchful, the sedan somewhere within it, circling, adjusting, hunting. Halfway up, my foot slipped. His hand caught mine instantly. Not just physically, mentally. A surge of steadiness flowed through me, correcting, aligning, pulling me back into balance. I've got you, he said quietly. And I believed him. Completely. We reached the rooftop breathless, the wind greeting us like something alive, tugging at clothes and hair, carrying the scent of rain and distant water. The city opened beneath us, lights scattered like constellations. Movement slowed into something almost peaceful, but it was a fragile peace, because I could still feel them, closer now, adapting, learning. I stepped toward the edge, looking down. The black sedan turned the corner below, still hunting, always hunting. Rory stepped beside me, his shoulder brushing mine, his presence anchoring me against the vastness of everything below. For a moment, we didn't move, didn't run, just stood there, suspended between danger and something else entirely. I should be terrified, I said quietly. But you're not, he replied. It wasn't a question. I shook my head. No, because the truth sat somewhere deeper than fear now, stronger, clearer. I turned to him, and without overthinking it, I kissed him again. Longer this time, not rushed, not desperate, intentional. The connection flared, bright and overwhelming, thoughts and feeling folding into each other, until there was no clean edge between where I ended and he began. His hand lifted to my face, gentle, grounding, his violet blush blooming again, luminous even in the thin rooftop light. For a moment, the world disappeared. No agents, no sedan, no fear, just us, and the impossible thread holding everything together. Then a ripple. Sharp. Immediate. They're here. His thoughts cut through the moment like glass. Below, doors opened. Footsteps. Voices low, controlled, closing in. I pulled back slightly, breath uneven. What do we do? His eyes met mine, certain. We don't let them separate us. A pause. Then, softer. No matter what happens, stay with me. I tightened my grip on his hand, and this time there was no hesitation in my answer. I'm not going anywhere. The wind rose around us, the city watching from below, the night holding its breath once more. And somewhere in the narrowing distance, the hunt continued. But so did we. The wind climbed higher, threading itself through the edges of the rooftop like a restless thought that refused to settle. It tugged at my sleeves, slipped through my hair, whispered across my skin with a kind of urgency that felt almost alive. Below us, doors shut, footsteps multiplied. The hunt had found its rhythm. Rory didn't move right away. Neither did I. We stood there, suspended between what was coming and what already existed between us. Something far quieter and far more dangerous than the agents below. The connection pulsed, not frantic, not afraid, certain. They're splitting up again, he said, though the words barely needed sound anymore. I could feel it, the way his awareness stretched outward, mapping positions, tracing motion through the dark, like ink finding its path through water. How long do we have? I asked. A pause. Then, less than a minute. It should have sent panic tearing through me. It didn't. Because something inside me had already shifted past that point. Fear was still there, yes, sharp and alive, but it no longer ruled anything. It had been rearranged, folded into something steadier, something that stood beside him instead of shrinking away. Then we don't waste it, I said quietly. He looked at me, really looked, like he was measuring something deeper than words. And then that faint, impossible colour touched his cheeks again. Violet, soft, brightening. You're changing, he murmured. I almost laughed. So are you. The truth of it hung between us, delicate and undeniable. We weren't the same people who had sat in that cafeteria. Something had intertwined too tightly now, something that didn't unwind. A sharp echo rose from the stairwell door behind us. Metal, handled, testing. They found the building, I whispered. Yes. No hesitation, no retreat in his voice, only decision. Rory stepped closer, his hand lifting, brushing lightly against my cheek. His touch was warm despite the wind, grounding in a way that made everything else feel distant. Destiny, what I'm about to do, he said softly. It's not something I've tried like this before. My pulse quickened. What do you mean, like this? His eyes held mine, that faint violet glow deepening, not just colour now, but something luminous beneath the surface. Not alone. The words settled into me, heavy, bright, dangerous. You want me to? What? I asked. Trust me. Simple, absolute, and terrifying in its simplicity. I swallowed. But I didn't look away. I already do. Something shifted in him then. Not physically, something deeper, like a door opening inward. The connection surged, not gently this time. It expanded, widened, pulled me with it. Suddenly, I wasn't just feeling him. I was inside the architecture of his awareness, not lost, not erased, but woven in. I could sense everything. The stairwell door behind us, 2 agents outside it, one reaching for the handle again, another moving along the adjacent rooftop, a third below, circling, positions, angles, timing. It all unfolded in a silent, crystalline map. My breath caught. This is how you see everything? I whispered. Our voices overlapped. Yes. But now, you're here too. The realization hit like a wave, not overwhelming, expansive. You're not just showing me, I said slowly. I'm part of it. Yes. A beat, and it's stronger with you. The door behind us rattled harder. Time snapped back into place. What do we do? I asked. This time, I didn't feel like I was asking out of fear. I was asking as part of something, as part of him. He didn't answer with words. He answered with intent, and I understood. Okay, I breathed. Let's do it. The connection tightened, not constricting, focused, like 2 currents aligning into one direction. The stairwell door burst open. Boots hit concrete, voices sharp, controlled. Stop! But we were already moving, not running, not reacting, acting, together. Rory stepped forward, pulling me with him, our hands locked, our thoughts aligned. I felt the shift before I saw it, the subtle distortion in attention as he pushed outward, not with force, but with precision. The agents hesitated, just for a fraction of a second, but it was enough. We moved across the rooftop, not toward the exit they expected, but toward the edge. What are we? Trust me. The words steadied everything. I didn't finish the question, didn't need to. We reached the ledge. The drop yawned below, a dizzying stretch of distance and shadow. Every instinct screamed against it. But the connection held, firm, unwavering. You won't fall, he said quietly. Not reassurance, fact, I know. And somehow, I did. The agent surged forward. Don't move! Too late. Rory pulled me closer and we stepped off. The world vanished, not into darkness, into something else. A suspended instant where gravity forgot its purpose. The air rushed past, sharp and roaring, but I didn't feel the fall the way I should have. Instead, I felt him, everywhere, around me, through me. The connection expanded again, wrapping the moment in something impossible, bending it, softening it, reshaping it. We weren't falling, we were redirected. The alley below rose to meet us, and then we were there. Not crashing, not collapsing, landing, smooth, silent. My knees buckled slightly, but his arms caught me instantly, steadying, anchoring, holding me upright as the world rushed back into focus. I stared at him, breathless. What was that? A flicker of exhaustion touched his expression, brief but real. A shortcut, he said, then softer. With you. It held. Footsteps echoed above, shouts, confusion. They hadn't followed. Not. We had seconds, maybe more. I didn't waste them. I grabbed his shirt and pulled him into a kiss. Not tentative, not careful, certain. The connection flared again, not as overwhelming this time, but deeper, steadier, like something settling into its true shape. His hand rose to the back of my neck, holding me there, his violet blush burning brighter than ever, vivid even in the dim alley light. When we finally broke apart, neither of us stepped back. Neither of us wanted to. That wasn't just you, I said, still catching my breath. He shook his head slightly. No. A small smile touched his lips. That was us. Something in my chest tightened at that. Not fear, not uncertainty. Something warmer. Something that felt like it had been waiting for a name. Above us, the noise shifted again. They were regrouping, adjusting, still hunting. Rory glanced upward, then back at me. We should keep moving. Yeah, but neither of us moved right away. The moment held. Quiet, electric, alive. I meant what I said, I murmured. His brow furrowed slightly. Which part? I stepped closer, closing what little distance remained between us. I'm not going anywhere. The words settled into him. I could feel it, the way they anchored, the way they mattered. His expression softened. That impossible colour deepened again. Good, he said, because I don't think I could let you. There was no edge of control in it, no threat, just truth, and something dangerously close to relief. We finally moved, slipping deeper into the alley, into the maze of the city where shadows overlapped and light fractured into scattered pieces. But something had changed. Not just the danger, not just the stakes. Us. The connection no longer felt like something new. It felt established, rooted, unavoidable. As we reached the mouth of the alley, the city opening out before us in quiet, distant motion, I glanced at him, at the way he moved, at the way he looked at me, and I understood something with a clarity that didn't need explanation. This wasn't temporary. This wasn't fragile. Whatever we had become in the space between fear and trust, between human and something else entirely, it wasn't going to break. Behind us, the agents continued their search. Ahead of us, the city stretched wide and uncertain, and between those two things, we walked, together, bound by something no one else could see, something no one else could touch, something no one else could sever. The thread had formed, and now it refused to unravel. Chapter 3. Connection. The sun was dropping low when I left the last bell behind, its golden light spilling across the hallways of Rosewood High, like spilled honey. I followed Rory, every step careful, almost reverent, as though I was stepping into a world that had quietly shifted the moment he appeared. Even after a week, the sensation didn't fade. His presence was the hum of a stringed instrument vibrating beneath your skin. Concentrate, he sent into my mind as we walked through the quiet corridors, his telepathy brushing against my thoughts like a soft feather. Focus on me, not the surroundings. I did as he said, letting the subtle rhythm of his awareness thread through me, the pulse of his thoughts calm and deliberate, guiding my own. It was strange, unnerving and exhilarating at the same time. I could feel his curiosity, the faint amusement at my own tentative attempts, and the gentle warmth that reminded me just how alive his presence was. The cafeteria was unusually quiet for a Friday afternoon. Most students had either left or lingered in small groups near the far corners, their chatter muted by distance. Rory sat near the tall windows, the last rays of the sun catching strands of straw-blonde hair, making them shine like spun gold. Violet eyes scanned the room casually, serene in a way that made the chaos around him feel muted, distant, irrelevant. I approached him cautiously, heart pounding with the mix of fear, excitement, and something much deeper that I wasn't ready to name. My hand brushed his under the table almost instinctively, and he didn't recoil. The faintest trace of purple crept across his cheeks, subtle enough that only someone watching closely would notice. Yet my chest constricted at the sight. "You can hold my hand whenever you want," he whispered, and I felt the words in my mind before hearing them. I froze, heat rising to my face, cheeks burning hotter than the cafeteria lights. But the courage that came from our connection nudged me forward, stronger than fear. I leaned closer, brushing my lips to his, and the world tilted, caught between the thrill of defiance and the impossible clarity of our shared telepathy. His hands found mine, warm and firm, and that blush deepened, a surreal violet that seemed to glow in the sunlit space. That was my first undeniable proof. Rory wasn't human, and yet he felt human enough to make my chest ache with longing. We lingered there until the bell rang, reluctant to break the fragile cocoon we had woven. Outside, the black sedan moved again, its engine barely making a sound, but I felt it, every subtle vibration through the threads of telepathy connecting me to him. Rory's hand tightened around mine, anchoring me. "Stay calm. Follow me." We slipped through the school grounds, our movement deliberate, silent, shadows stretching long as the sun dipped below the horizon. The city beyond was coming alive, lights flickering on in rows of windows, street lamps humming to life, the distant sound of traffic blending with the occasional call of a night bird. Every sensory detail was heightened, amplified by the thread of telepathy linking us. I could sense his awareness brushing against my mind like the faintest caress, guiding me, grounding me. We reached the park behind the school, its expanse quiet, the grass glowing faintly under the emerging moonlight. A few distant figures passed by the perimeter, but otherwise it was empty. We settled on a bench, side by side, our hands brushing together in that gentle, electric way that made every nerve in my body awake and alert. "I've never felt anything like this," I whispered, heart thundering, voice trembling despite the calm that his presence exuded. "Connection isn't something you feel often," he said softly, leaning closer. "It's rare, but it's powerful, and ours." I closed my eyes, letting his awareness wash over me. Images, sensations, emotions, small flashes of his perception of the world outside our bubble. I could see the black sedan again, faint shadows moving with purpose, a threat just beyond our vision. Fear flared, but it was tempered by awe, by the impossibly intimate bond threading us together. "I don't want anything to happen to you," I said, voice breaking slightly. He pressed a hand gently to my arm, grounding me. "Then don't worry, not when we're connected." That connection pulsed stronger than I'd ever imagined, and I dared another kiss, longer this time. His violet blush deepened, a surreal, breathtaking hue, impossible and magical. Every nerve, every thought, every heartbeat was synchronized, a rhythm that I never wanted to break. Then the subtle disturbance, a shift in the telepathy threads, a whisper of movement from the darkened edges of the park. Agents, watching, waiting. Rory's grip tightened, and I felt his thoughts press urgently into mine. "We must move. Carefully. Got it. I'm keeping the exact thread. No resets, no drift. Same tone, same structure, same momentum." I nodded, and together we slipped into the shadows, guided by his extraordinary perception, each step deliberate, our minds entwined in a dance of awareness, fear and exhilaration. Every sound, rustling leaves, distant traffic, a dog barking, registered in sharp clarity, feeding the web of telepathy that linked us. It wasn't just that I could hear the world better, it was that I could feel how he heard it, like standing inside someone else's senses without losing your own. We moved through the edge of the school grounds without speaking, cutting between dim stretches of concrete and overgrown patches of grass that seemed to swallow sound. The city beyond was waking fully now, streetlights blooming one by one like artificial stars, their glow reflecting off wet pavement from earlier rain. Everything felt sharpened, too sharp, as if reality itself had turned its volume up. Rory stayed just ahead of me, but never truly separated. Even when I couldn't see his face clearly, I could feel him, steady, calculating, calm, in a way that made my own pulse feel louder by comparison. Every few seconds, a quiet pulse of thought passed between us. Not words exactly, more like direction shaped into intention. Left. Wait. Now. And I followed. We reached the park behind the school, its openness almost unsettling after the narrow corridors and tight pathways. The grass shimmered faintly under the rising moon, each blade catching silver light like something trying to remember how to glow. We stopped near a bench, not because we were safe, because we needed a moment to breathe inside the same space without running. His hand brushed mine again. This time, neither of us pulled away. "I've never felt anything like this," I whispered, my voice smaller than I intended, like the night might overhear. Rory tilted his head slightly toward me, eyes reflecting the pale sky. "Connection isn't something you feel often," he said softly, voice threading directly through my thoughts again, overlapping sound and silence in a way that made it impossible to distinguish where one ended. "It's rare, but it's powerful." A pause. Then quieter. "And this one is ours." The words settled in my chest like something that had been waiting there already. I closed my eyes, and the world changed again. Not outwardly, inwardly. His awareness unfolded into mine more fully now, like a door that had only been cracked open, finally allowing air to rush through. I could feel fragments of perception that weren't mine, angles of attention, distant calculations, subtle awareness of movement far beyond what I should have been able to sense. And then, something else, a shape in the distance. Wrong, watching, the black sedan. It wasn't close yet, but it didn't need to be. It was there in the way pressure exists before impact, a certainty without presence. Fear flickered through me before I could stop it. Rory felt it instantly, his grip tightened around my hand, not painful, but decisive. "Stay calm," he sent, and now his voice had shifted. Less softness, more structure. "I've got you, but we need to move carefully." I nodded, though my throat felt tight. The park suddenly felt smaller, Every shadow stretched longer than it should have. Every rustle of leaves sounded deliberate, like the world was pretending not to notice us while quietly tightening around us. We stood, and the moment we did, the connection sharpened again. Not emotional now, strategic. His awareness extended outward like invisible threads, touching edges of movement I couldn't see. I felt it as much as I understood it, like standing inside a mind that was mapping the world in real time. We moved, quickly but not hurried, careful steps, controlled breath, shared rhythm. The city swallowed us as we left the park, folding us into narrower streets where light flickered unevenly between buildings. Each turn felt intentional, like we were moving through a pattern only he could see, and I was learning to follow without questioning. At one point, I stumbled slightly on uneven pavement. Instantly, I felt him adjust, not physically, mentally, a subtle shift in awareness that steadied me before I even regained balance. "You're incredible," I whispered without meaning to, half awe, half disbelief. He didn't look back, but I felt the faintest echo of emotion in him. Not pride, something quieter, relief. We turned down a narrower street, the kind where the buildings leaned slightly inward as if trying to hear what passed between them. The air smelled faintly of damp concrete and distant exhaust. Somewhere far off, a siren rose and fell like a question nobody answered. The sedan's presence shifted again. Closer. Now real enough to press against these edges of awareness. Rory stopped at the mouth of an alley. His head tilted slightly, like he was listening to something beneath sound itself. Then he reached for my hand again, firm, certain. "Hold on," he said softly, out loud this time. This might get fast. Before I could respond, the world moved, not metaphorically, physically. He pulled me forward into motion so sudden it stole breath from my lungs. We ran through the alley, shadows folding around us like closing curtains. My feet barely registered impact before I was already being guided into the next step, the next turn, the next decision already made before I could think it. And through it all, the connection, constant, unbroken. I could feel his focus like a blade cutting clean paths through chaos. I could feel his awareness of every exit, every sound, every possible movement behind us, and beneath that precision, something steady, something anchored to me. We reached a rooftop access point without me fully remembering how. One moment alley, next moment height. Wind hit my face sharply as we stepped up onto the roof, the city suddenly spreading wide beneath us like a field of fractured light. Windows glittered, streets pulsed. The world below moved unaware of the thin line we were balancing on above it. Rory didn't release my hand. Neither did I want him to. "We're ahead of them," he said quietly, though his attention never stopped moving. "But not by much," I swallowed. "They're really that close?" A pause. Then softer. "They always are." The wind shifted, and I felt it again. That pressure in the distance. The sedan, still below, still searching, but no longer guessing. Rory stepped closer to the edge of the roof, pulling me with him just enough that I had to follow or lose contact. The city lights reflected in his eyes, turning them briefly into something almost unreal. "You're not leaving me," I said before I even realized I was speaking. His gaze softened slightly. "You won't need to leave me," he replied. And for a moment, even the danger felt distant. The wind on the rooftop didn't feel like air anymore. It felt like motion itself, like the city exhaling through concrete veins and broken light. It pressed against my skin, tugging at my balance, pulling at the edges of thought that were already stretched too thin. Rory stood beside me, still holding my hand. He never let go. Below us, the city pulsed in fractured gold and silver. Cars moved like distant sparks. Windows flickered. Life continued as if nothing strange existed above it, as if two people weren't standing on the edge of something impossible. But I could feel it, the sedan, still there, not rushing, not panicking, waiting. That was worse. "They're repositioning," Rory said quietly, not looking at me, his attention split across something I couldn't fully see. "They're trying to box us in." "How many?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. A pause. "More than before." The words landed heavy, not dramatic, just true. I tightened my grip on his hand without realizing it. The connection between us reacted instantly, his awareness shifting, stabilizing mine before panic could fully form. It wasn't reassurance in words, it was structure, like something inside me being gently held in place so it wouldn't collapse. "You're shaking," he said softly. "I'm not," I started. but stopped, because I was. Not from cold, from everything else. Rory turned slightly toward me then. His violet eyes caught the city glow, turning them deeper, almost luminous. For a moment, he looked less like someone standing beside me and more like something anchored briefly into this world. "You don't have to carry this alone," he said. The words weren't just spoken. They arrived inside me, and something inside my chest cracked open just slightly at the weight of them. "I'm not alone," I said before I could stop myself. His expression shifted faintly, not surprise, recognition, like he had been waiting for me to realize that. Below, something changed. Movement. The sedan had stopped trying to hide. Doors opened. Dark figures stepped out into the streetlight. I felt them before I saw them clearly. Through him, through the widening thread between our awarenesses. Their attention wasn't random anymore. It was focused, directed, like a net being lifted slowly into place. "They've locked onto us," I whispered. "Yes," he said. No hesitation, no fear, just acknowledgement. The rooftop suddenly felt smaller again, the edges closer, the air thinner. Every possible escape route unfolded in my mind like a maze I didn't know how to solve. Rory stepped back from the edge, pulling me with him. "Listen carefully," he said, and now his voice changed. Not softer, not louder, clearer, like everything else had been stripped away from it. "You're going to stay close to me, no matter what you see, no matter what you feel, you do not let go." I nodded, but my throat was tight. "I trust you," I said. He looked at me then, really looked, and something flickered in his expression, something almost human in its intensity. "I know," he said. The connection between us tightened. Not emotionally now, operationally, like a bridge locking into place. The agents below began moving, fast now, coordinated. They weren't guessing anymore. They knew. Rory moved first. He pulled me away from the roof's edge and toward a side structure I hadn't noticed before, a maintenance access point, half hidden behind a ventilation unit. His hand never left mine. His steps were precise, almost fluid, like he was reading the building instead of navigating it. I followed because there was no other option that made sense anymore. We dropped into a narrow stairwell, concrete walls, dim emergency light, echoes swallowing sound. The city vanished above us, replaced by enclosed space and descending pressure. "They're splitting," he sent into my mind as we moved downward quickly. "One group is staying above, one is coming in from street level." "How are they doing that?" I whispered. "They're trained to track anomalies," he replied. "I'm not supposed to be one." That last part lingered, not bitter, not emotional, just factual. We reached a lower exit and slipped into another alley, narrower than the last. The air here was colder, sharper, carrying the metallic scent of damp brick and distant rain that hadn't fully left the ground. Every sound felt amplified now. Every footstep behind us could have been ours, or theirs. I could feel my heart beat through the connection, except it wasn't just mine anymore. It was partially his too, stabilized, synced, adjusted like two rhythms trying to become one. "Left," he said suddenly. We turned. A shadow moved at the far end of the street. Not close enough to confirm, but close enough to matter. My chest tightened. Rory didn't slow, didn't hesitate. He pulled me forward again, faster now, and I realized something terrifying and strange at the same time. He wasn't just guiding me. He was predicting everything ahead of us. Not guessing. Knowing. We reached a small fenced gap between buildings. Without stopping, he stepped up, braced, and lifted us over in one fluid motion. I barely had time to process the height before we were on the other side, landing into another shadowed passage. My breath came sharp, my hand still in his, never broken. "They're closer," I said. "I know," he replied. And then he stopped, just for a second, right in the center of the alley. Everything in me tensed. "What are you doing?" I asked. His eyes lifted slightly, scanning something I couldn't see, then softer, almost like he was speaking more to himself than me. "This is the only way out without escalation." My stomach dropped. "Escalation?" I echoed. He looked at me again, and for the first time since this began, there was something fragile in his calm. "They'll escalate if we keep running." A pause. "Then I can end this now, but you have to trust me completely." The alley felt impossibly still. Even the distant city noise seemed to fade. I swallowed hard. What do I have to do? His grip tightened slightly, not forceful, anchoring. "Don't resist anything you feel through the connection," he said. "Not fear, not pressure, not me." My breath caught. That didn't sound like escape. That sounded like surrender, but I nodded anyway, because there wasn't really a choice anymore. "I trust you," I said again. His expression softened just slightly, and then the connection changed. It deepened. Not outward, inward, like the space between our minds collapsed into something sharper, more focused, more absolute. I felt him extend something through it, not emotion, not thought, but intent itself. The air around us seemed to shift. Pressure changed, distance distorted. Somewhere far away, I heard the faint confusion of movement, agents reacting to something they couldn't predict. Rory squeezed my hand once, then said softly, "Now," and the world moved with him, not against us, through us. The alley, the city, the pursuit, all of it blurred into a single collapsing line of motion and intention as we stepped forward into whatever came next, together. Chapter 4, Pulse. I didn't wake up alone. That realization didn't arrive like fear or alarm. It came quietly, like something sliding into a space it already knew the shape of, as if my consciousness had been briefly edited while I slept and no one had bothered to tell me what was changed. Rory wasn't beside me, but he wasn't gone either. That was the first impossibility, because last night, absence had rules. When sleep separated us, the connection between us collapsed completely, like a thread snapped clean through reality. No echo, no residue, no sense that anything had ever been there at all. This morning there was residue. Not loud, not visible, not even certain in the way thoughts usually are, just present. I lay still, staring at the ceiling, waiting for it to behave like memory, waiting for it to degrade, to fade, to obey the familiar logic of waking life where dreams dissolve without negotiation. It didn't. It stayed, soft, continuous, wrong in its consistency, like a note held too long in a silent room. "Rory?" I whispered. No sound answered. But something inside me shifted anyway. Not imagination, not thought. Attention. A directional awareness, like something far away had turned its focus toward me without moving at all. My chest tightened before I could interpret why. He felt me, still there, still connected, but no longer behaving like something that depended on proximity or willpower. This wasn't the fragile tether from before sleep. This was continuity, unbroken, unnegotiated. Morning light filtered through the curtains in pale, diffused ribbons. It should have been comforting. It should have grounded me in something familiar. Instead, it only emphasized how unchanged the room looked compared to how changed I felt inside it. The thread remained, not loud, not demanding, worse, stable. Stability had weight now. It pressed against awareness like something that refused to fluctuate, even when it should have. I pressed my fingers to my temple, half instinct, half attempt at correction, as if thought was something physical that could be adjusted back into alignment. Nothing changed. The thread didn't respond to force. It responded to attention. And when I focused on it again, it felt like it noticed a faint shift, a subtle turn inward, as if awareness itself had become bidirectional. I sat up slowly. The room looked unchanged, yet slightly misaligned, like reality had been reconstructed from memory instead of continuity. Everything correct, everything familiar, and still something off in the way it held together. And somewhere inside that imperfection, Rory remained. Downstairs, the house insisted on normality. The smell of garlic and butter drifted through the kitchen, warm and repetitive, like ritual disguised as breakfast. A world trying very hard not to acknowledge any deviation from its expected script. My father stood at the stove, moving with quiet precision. He didn't turn when he spoke. "Morning?" "Morning," I replied. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone slightly more stable than I felt. I sat at the table. The chair wasn't uncomfortable, but it felt delayed, like it had to decide whether I was really supposed to be there. "You sleep okay?" he asked. The question landed too simply for what I was carrying. "I think so," I said after a moment. He glanced over his shoulder. Brief, measured, not suspicious, just observant in a way that didn't ask for explanation, but still recorded the answer. "You think so?" "Yeah," I said, focusing on the fork in my hand. "Just tired." He turned back to the stove. The conversation ended, but nothing inside me resolved with it, because the thread didn't fade here either. It followed, not attached to place, not dependent on context, present, patient. alive in a way that made silence feel shared instead of empty. By the time I stood later, I wasn't choosing direction anymore. I was receiving it. It began as inclination, then refined itself into certainty without explanation, street by street, step by step. A quiet correction in my sense of movement, like the world had already decided where I was going and was simply waiting for me to agree. At the door, I paused. For a moment, I considered resisting it, just to prove that choice still functioned the way it used to. The moment I hesitated, the thread reacted, not forceful, curious, like something noticing hesitation for the first time and storing the result. My breath slowed. "I'm not imagining this," I whispered. No verbal response came, but the thread tightened slightly in acknowledgement, like the concept itself had been noted. I stepped outside. The world looked normal. It always did. That was part of its disguise. People moved through sidewalks, wrapped in private continuities. Cars passed, trees shifted, everything obeying the surface rules of reality without question or hesitation. But beneath it all, something else was unfolding. The thread was directional now, and it was leading me toward him. Each step clarified it, each block refined it, until I stopped wondering if I was going somewhere and started realizing I already was. Then I saw him, across the street, still. Waiting like he had been placed there before time decided to continue. Rory didn't move when he saw me, he only looked up. And the moment our eyes met, the thread inside me answered. Fully, cleanly, like a door remembering it had ever truly been closed. "There you are," he sent. Not spoken, not imagined, just present, already inside me. My breath caught. "You felt that too," I said, stepping off the curb. "Yes," he replied. No hesitation. But something beneath him felt different now. Not new, not forming, observed, managed, like even certainty required maintenance. When I reached him, the thread tightened again, stronger, sharper, not pain, presence. My fingers brushed his before I consciously decided to move, and contact changed everything. The bond did not simply exist anymore. It responded. Somewhere beyond language, something turned its attention more closely toward us, and I understood without wanting to. We were not alone inside it. Something else was learning through it. The moment his hand stayed in mine, the world didn't change so much as it reorganized its timing. Not louder, not sharper, just faster in a way that felt intimate, like reality had leaned closer to listen. Everything around us remained intact, street, air, distant movement, but the space between those things began to feel less reliable, as if distance had stopped being a fixed rule and started behaving like something negotiable. I felt it first as pressure, not on skin, on meaning, a tightening through the bond, not between us, but through us, like something had threaded itself deeper into the structure of perception itself. Rory's fingers shifted slightly against mine, not gripping, not loosening, adjusting like a system correcting for drift. "I feel it changing," I said quietly. "Yes," he replied. Immediate. Controlled, almost too immediate, as if the answer had already been waiting for the question to arrive. A car passed behind us, tires whispering over damp asphalt, but the sound felt delayed, like it belonged to a slightly older version of the street. The thread between us no longer behaved like connection, it behaved like awareness, observing itself through us. "You said distance used to weaken it," I said. "It did," he replied. "And now?" A pause, not uncertainty. Processing. It retains state. The words didn't sit like explanation. They sat like definition being enforced. "So it remembers," I said. "Yes." That single confirmation carried something heavier than agreement. Memory implied accumulation. Accumulation implied continuity beyond interruption. The thread pulsed again. Not random, not emotional, structured, like something testing how response behaved under repeated pressure. I swallowed. "So it's learning us." "Yes." Another pulse followed immediately after my next thought, too precise to ignore. I froze for half a second before I could stop myself. Rory noticed instantly. "Latency is decreasing," he said. My voice tightened. "Meaning? Less time between internal reaction and external detection." That landed differently than anything else had so far, because it removed privacy not by intrusion, but by timing. The thread flickered. And in that flicker, I felt something new, a tension that didn't arrive, but was already there before recognition could form. Not approaching, already present, just becoming measurable. "They're observing through structure now," Rory said. My throat went dry. "Through us?" "Yes." The word didn't feel like explanation anymore. It felt like placement. We were no longer outside the system being studied. We were part of the lens. Another pulse hit immediately after I thought, why? And the timing was so exact it almost erased the shape of the question itself. My breath caught. Rory stayed still, but I could feel the effort in him, something contained, not released. Refinement cycle, he said. They reduce variance. My stomach tightened, so every reaction sharpens them. Yes, the thread stabilized for a moment, not calming but focusing, like a tension narrowing through repetition. I think we're being tested, I said quietly. Yes, he replied. What for? A pause stretched long enough that the silence itself felt like it was being recorded. Stability, he said. The word changed weight the moment it was spoken. Not safety, not balance. Something closer to reproducibility under observation. The thread pulsed again, softer now. Almost careful. Like something had stopped probing randomly and started watching patterns emerge from what we did naturally. Rory's grip on my hand adjusted again, subtle but precise, like he was maintaining alignment with something I couldn't see. They're no longer testing presence, he said. My voice dropped. Then what are they testing? A pause. Continuity, he said. The word lingered in the air between us. Continuity meant persistence without rupture. A thing that did not break when conditions changed. We already have that, I said. Yes. Another pause. But they're testing whether it requires us to maintain it. That shifted everything underneath the conversation, because maintenance implied authorship, and removal of maintenance implied substitution. The thread pulsed again, soft, controlled, almost attentive, like it was beginning to distinguish not just reaction, but structure of reaction. I looked at Rory more directly. For the first time, I noticed how divided his attention was, not between me and the world, but between me and the bond itself. Like part of him was here, and part of him was holding something open that shouldn't be open. You're stabilizing it, I said quietly. Yes, he replied. No hesitation, no evasion, just function. Why? I asked. A pause. The thread pulsed once inside the silence, like it was listening too. Because collapse is not reset, he said. My stomach dropped slightly. Then what is it? Rory didn't answer immediately. Instead, the thread responded. A slow pulse. Measured. Almost evaluative. Like something on the other side had just become aware of how the question was structured. Rory exhaled once and said quietly, They're closer than they were. My eyes narrowed. Who is they? He didn't answer in words. Instead, the thread shifted. And in that shift, I felt it. Not presence arriving, but presence confirming itself. As if something far larger had just verified that we were still readable. My pulse tightened. Rory's gaze flicked briefly down the street. Not scanning people, scanning consistency. They're mapping response timing now, he said. I whispered, That's what this is? Yes. A pause. And they're getting faster. The thread pulsed again, closer than before. Not pressure now. Recognition. Like something was learning the difference between us and everything else by how we failed to separate from each other. And in that realization, the air between us felt suddenly less like space and more like data waiting to be finalized. The vehicles didn't arrive like intrusion. They arrived like confirmation, as if something that had already been decided somewhere beyond sight had finally reached the point where it could be made visible without contradiction. 2 positions, 1 corridor, us inside it, not pursuit. Geometry. The street itself seemed to accept the arrangement before we did, like space had been quietly negotiated in advance. The thread between Rory and me tightened slightly. Not panic. Calibration. They're closing the system, I said quietly. Yes, he replied. No hesitation remained in him now. Only recognition, clean and unfiltered, like resistance had already been accounted for and removed from the equation. The bond pulsed again. But this time it felt different, not reaction, anticipation. Like something on the other side had stopped studying what we did and started preparing for what we would do next. They've stopped random probing, Rory said. So what now, I asked. They respond directly, he said, a pause. In real time. That sentence didn't add information, it removed distance, because real time meant no gap between thought and detection. No separation between intention and interpretation, no private moment where anything could exist unobserved, I swallowed. So they can feel us, I said. Yes. The response came too cleanly after my next thought, too precisely aligned. I froze. Rory didn't move, but I saw the change in him anyway, attention tightening inward, like he was holding something steady that wanted to become unstable. Latency collapse, he said. They're synchronizing detection with cognition. My voice came out quieter than intended. So every thought is registered, he finished. The thread flickered, and in that flicker, something shifted, not approaching, not arriving, but aligning, like attention itself had found its focal point and refused to drift again. The vehicles remained still at the edges of the street, not advancing, not retreating, positioned, waiting not for movement, but for decision. I realized then the arrangement wasn't containment in the usual sense. It was calibration space, a controlled environment where reaction could be measured without interference. We were not trapped in it, we were the variables inside it. The thread pulsed again, soft, careful, almost observant, like something had begun refining its understanding of us not through pressure, but through patience. They're mapping stability, Rory said. My chest tightened. Stability of what? Continuity under observation, he replied. The phrase landed differently this time, because continuity wasn't just persistence anymore. It was persistence that could survive being seen. I looked at him, really looked. And for the first time, I understood what he was doing beneath everything else, not resisting it, not surrendering to it, maintaining it, like someone holding open a system that would otherwise collapse into something irreversible. You're keeping it from closing, I said quietly. Yes, he replied. No emotion attached to it, only function. Why? I asked. A pause. The thread pulsed once inside the silence. Not random. Listening. Because collapse is not reset, he said. My stomach tightened. Then what is it? He didn't answer immediately because the thread did, a slow pulse, measuring, not us now, the space between us, the pattern we formed when observed continuously. They're getting closer, he said. My voice dropped. Closer to what? To replication, he replied. That word changed the air. Replication didn't mean understanding, it meant duplication without origin. Something built that no longer needed what created it. I felt my grip on his hand shift instinctively. The thread responded immediately, not sharply, precisely, like it had recorded the motion and adjusted its internal model. Rory noticed. Don't disengage abruptly, he said quietly. I'm not trying to, I replied, but I realized even intention was becoming irrelevant, because everything was being read before it fully formed. A distant sound cut through the street again. Engines, coordinated, not approaching. Positioning further, like the geometry of containment was still refining itself. Rory's attention shifted slightly, not toward the vehicles, but toward the thread itself. They've synchronized with it, he said. My stomach tightened. With what? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, the thread responded, a pulse that felt less like sensation and more like recognition, as if something had confirmed a hypothesis about us and was now adjusting reality accordingly. They're not observing us anymore. Rory said, my voice barely held. Then what are they doing? They're learning how we maintain coherence, he said. A pause. In shared structure. That phrase settled too deeply because it meant the bond between us was no longer private experience. It was a readable system, a model, a pattern that could be studied externally without breaking its internal function. The thread pulsed again, and this time I felt something new inside it. Not awareness of us. Awareness of its own observation being observed. I exhaled slowly. This is recursive, I said. Yes, Rory replied. The word carried no surprise. Only recognition that recursion had already begun before we named it. The vehicles remained still, but the silence around them felt structured now, like space had been divided into intervals of evaluation. I felt my thoughts slow, not from fear, but from the sense that even thinking had begun to carry measurable weight. They're testing response stability, I said. Yes. And if we destabilize, a pause, the thread pulsed once, soft, measured, almost curious. Then they learned failure conditions, he said. That landed heavier than anything else, because failure wasn't collapse anymore. It was data. Rory looked at me again, and for the first time I saw something beneath his control that wasn't emotion, but scale. Like he understood exactly how large this system had become and was still choosing to hold it open anyway. They're getting close to replicating continuity, he said quietly. My voice dropped. Without us? Yes. A pause. And with us as reference? The thread pulsed again, and for the first time I felt it not just between us, but extending outward, like something using us as the center point of a larger construction. Not containment anymore, architecture. I swallowed. So what happens when they finish, I ask. Rory didn't answer immediately, because the thread did, a soft pulse, almost identical to ours, but not quite alive in the same way. Rory exhaled slowly. Then they no longer need the original, he said. The words didn't land as threat, they landed as conclusion. And somewhere inside the thread, something echoed back in perfect imitation. Not broken, not distorted, just learned. As if reality itself had finally understood how to continue without asking permission from what started it. Chapter 5. Capture. I wake up already knowing something is wrong. Not the kind of wrong that announces itself with sound or motion, but the kind that settles into the space behind thought before thought even forms. My eyes open, and the world is there, technically complete, but missing something I can't name at first. It's like reading a sentence where every word is correct, but the meaning has been quietly erased. I stay still, listening to my own breathing. It sounds normal, that should help. It doesn't. The ceiling above me is familiar, and that familiarity should be grounding. Instead, it feels staged, like I've seen it before in a place that wasn't real. My body feels heavier than usual, but not in a physical way, more like gravity has decided to pay extra attention to me today. I sit up slowly. The room shifts with me, slightly out of sync, like it's adjusting after the fact. My feet touch the floor, and the coldness is delayed by half a second. I notice that delay more than I notice the cold itself. Something in me starts scanning for explanations. Sleep deprivation, stress, overthinking. The usual suspects line up neatly, but none of them feel like they belong in this particular moment. They feel borrowed, like someone else's words I'm repeating without conviction. I stand. The air in the room feels denser than it should. Not physically heavier, but aware. That thought makes me pause, because it doesn't feel like something I chose to think. It feels like something I noticed before I could stop myself from noticing it. I move toward the mirror without deciding to. My reflection is there, waiting in the glass like it arrived before I did. My face is unchanged. Same eyes, same lines of fatigue, same everything I expect. And yet, there's a fraction of a second where I don't recognize it as mine. Not because it's different, but because it feels slightly detached, like it's performing me rather than being me. I blink hard. The feeling doesn't vanish immediately. It lingers, then slowly recedes, like something stepping back into hiding. I turn away. My phone is on the desk. I pick it up. The screen lights too sharply, too cleanly, like it's trying to pull me into clarity I didn't ask for. Notifications appear, meaningless fragments of other people's lives. I scroll without absorbing any of it. But the scrolling becomes automatic quickly, and my attention starts slipping sideways again. That's when I notice the silence. Not literal silence. The house still exists, still breathes with its usual faint mechanical sounds. But something underneath it feels absent. A background presence I didn't realize I relied on until it stopped being there. I stop moving my thumb. The phone screen remains bright, but I'm no longer reading it. There is a pressure forming behind my thoughts now. Not pain, not sound. Something closer to awareness itself pressing gently against the inside of my mind, as if trying to see whether I notice it noticing me. I swallow. The thought arrives uninvited. I am being observed. I almost reject it immediately because it's absurd. There is no reason for that idea to exist here. No logic, no evidence, nothing real enough to hold it up. And yet the feeling that follows it does not argue. It waits. I take a step toward the door. The floor creaks under my weight, and the sound feels too precise, too intentional, like it wasn't meant to happen unnoticed. I stop for half a second, listening to the aftermath of it, but nothing responds. No correction. No reassurance, just the same quiet pressure in the air. I reach for the doorknob. My hand hovers there longer than it should, because I realize I don't know what I expect to find on the other side. That should be comforting. Not knowing. Uncertainty usually means imagination filling gaps it shouldn't be allowed to fill. But this isn't imagination. This feels like anticipation, like something has already accounted for me standing here, about to open this door, and is simply waiting for me to confirm it. I close my eyes briefly. When I open them again, the room hasn't changed. But I turn the knob. The latch gives way with a soft click that feels louder than it should be. And for a fraction of a second before I fully commit to opening it, I understand something I can't articulate. Not fear, recognition. The door opens, and the world doesn't greet me the way it should. There is no sudden change, no dramatic shift in lighting or sound, nothing that would confirm I've crossed a threshold. Instead, it feels like the boundary itself has softened, as if the room and whatever lies beyond it have agreed to stop behaving like separate spaces. I step forward anyway. The hallway is there, unchanged in structure but subtly wrong in tone. The air carries a stillness that feels curated, like someone has removed the background noise of life and left only what remains when everything else is held back. I pause just outside my room. My door remains open behind me, but even that detail feels uncertain, like it might not stay that way if I stop paying attention to it. I force myself to walk. Each step produces sound, but the sound feels delayed, like it is arriving slightly after the movement that created it. I notice that more than I notice the act of walking itself. My attention keeps slipping into these small distortions, as if my perception is being gently redirected toward the edges of things. The hallway lights are on, but they don't feel like illumination. They feel like coverage, like something is trying to ensure there are no gaps in visibility, not because anything is hiding, but because absence itself might be unacceptable. I don't like that thought. I don't know where it comes from. I stop halfway down the hall. There's a mirror at the end, small, decorative, something I've passed 100 times without thinking. But now it feels different, not threatening, not exactly, but aware in a way objects are not supposed to be aware. I start walking again before I can analyze that thought too deeply. The closer I get, the more I feel like I'm being measured. Not watched in a traditional sense, but evaluated in increments I cannot see, like my presence is being compared to something invisible beside me. My reflection appears before I reach it, except it doesn't match me immediately. There is a fraction of delay again, that same subtle lag I felt earlier. I lift my hand instinctively, and the reflection follows a beat behind. It is small enough that I could dismiss it under normal circumstances, but nothing about this feels normal. I stop in front of the mirror. My reflection stabilizes, aligning itself with my movements, but the moment I hold still, it feels like it relaxes too, like it has been waiting for permission to match me properly. I stare at it longer than I intend to. There is nothing physically wrong with what I see. My face is the same, my posture is the same. But the longer I look, the more I feel like I am not the original version of what I am seeing. That thought lands too cleanly. I step away from the mirror. The hallway behind me stretches further than it should, or at least it feels that way. I cannot tell if the distance has changed or if my perception of it has been altered. Either possibility feels equally plausible. I continue walking. The house is quiet, but it is not empty of presence. That distinction becomes clearer the longer I move through it. It feels inhabited by something that does not need sound to exist. I pass the kitchen. Everything is in place, untouched. A glass sits near the sink, catching light that does not feel natural. I don't remember leaving it there, but that alone is not unusual. Memory has been unreliable lately in ways I haven't fully admitted to myself. I keep moving. My thoughts begin to fragment into smaller pieces, each one trying to interpret the same sensation from different angles. None of them feel sufficient on their own. There is a pressure again, but this time, it is not behind my eyes. It feels more distributed, like the entire house is holding a thought it has not yet decided to release. I reach the living room. The furniture is exactly where it should be. The arrangement is familiar enough to be comforting under normal circumstances, but now it feels like a composition rather than a lived-in space. Everything positioned with intent I do not remember consenting to. I stop in the center of the room. For the first time since I woke up, I become aware of how still I have been emotionally. Not calm, not numb, something else. Like my reactions are being filtered before they reach me. The idea of leaving the house enters my mind, but it doesn't feel like a decision forming naturally. It feels inserted, like a suggestion placed carefully where my thoughts would normally grow. I look toward the front door. It is closed. I am certain I did not close it. My heartbeat changes. Not faster, just more noticeable, like it has decided to participate in my awareness again. I walk toward it. Each step feels heavier than before, as if the house is subtly increasing resistance with proximity. That thought should scare me more than it does. Instead, it feels observational, like I am cataloguing a phenomenon rather than experiencing it. I reach the door. My hand rests on the handle. There is a pause here that feels longer than time should allow. Not in a dramatic sense, but in a structural one, like the moment itself is being examined before it is permitted to continue. I realize suddenly that I am not alone in my attention. Something is here with me, not physically, not visibly, but aligned with the act of noticing. Like my awareness has company. I don't turn around. I open the door. And the outside world waits for me, unchanged in appearance, but no longer convincing in its simplicity. Because now I know something is watching the way I move through it. The air is still wrong when I realize I've been standing in it too long. Not because it moves differently, but because it seems to be holding its shape around me with patience I don't remember agreeing to. The street is unchanged, but the sense of it has shifted again, like something behind everything has adjusted its attention. And then I feel him. Not as sound, not as movement. More like pressure returning to a place in my mind that had gone quiet for too long. Rory, it isn't a physical arrival. It's worse and better at the same time. It's the sudden certainty that I am not the only one being observed inside whatever this is. My breath catches before I can stop it. The world around me does not react outwardly, but I swear something inside it tightens, like a system registering a second point of awareness inside the same space. Rory's presence sharpens, not distant anymore, aligned. I don't turn my head right away. I don't need to. I can feel where he is without seeing him. Like my mind has learned a new kind of distance measurement it didn't have yesterday. Destiny. His voice doesn't come from one direction. It comes from inside the space between my thoughts, clean and immediate, like it's already inside me before I register it as sound. I finally turn. He's there at the edge of the street, half lit by a sky that still refuses to behave like it means anything. He looks the same as he did before, but the way he stands has changed, less like someone arriving, more like someone confirming something already known. His eyes meet mine, and the pressure in the air changes again, like recognition has multiplied. I take a step toward him before I realize I've moved. Something's off, I say, but it comes out too controlled, too thin, like I'm reporting weather instead of describing reality unraveling at the edges. Rory doesn't answer immediately. He scans the space around us instead, not with his eyes alone, but with something deeper in his attention, like he's listening to layers I can barely feel. The silence stretches, not empty, waiting. Then his expression tightens. That's when I know it's worse than I thought. They know who we are, he says. The words don't land like a statement. They land like a lock clicking into place somewhere I can't see. My chest tightens instantly. Rory takes a step closer now, and I feel it clearly. Whatever is watching us shifts its focus to both of us at once. He lowers his voice, but it doesn't matter. The air carries it anyway, like the environment has decided nothing between us is private anymore. We've got trouble. The moment he says it, something changes in the street. Not visibly, structurally. Like the world has just acknowledged the sentence as valid input. The sensation hits me hard enough that I almost lose my balance. I glance down the road instinctively, and for a fraction of a second, I see it again. Not the street, the layer beneath it, a geometry that reacts. It's gone before I can fully understand it, but now I know it wasn't my imagination earlier. It was an interruption in whatever is being maintained here. Rory notices my reaction immediately. Yeah! He says quietly, like he's confirming something he hoped wasn't true. You saw it too? I don't answer, because I don't trust my voice right now. The pressure in the air increases again, but now it feels coordinated, not random, not ambient, focused. Like attention has decided we are no longer separate points of interest, we are a pair. Rory steps beside me now, not touching, but close enough that I can feel the stability of his presence anchoring mine. Whatever this is, it reacts to that too. I feel it hesitate, just for a moment, like it wasn't expecting resistance to come in duplicate. Rory looks forward down the street. We shouldn't stay visible, he says. The way he says visible makes my stomach tighten, because it implies something I don't want to define yet. I swallow. Where do we go? I ask. He doesn't answer immediately. Instead, he looks at me for a second longer than before, like he's checking whether I'm fully here, fully stable inside myself. Then he nods once, as if deciding something. Anywhere that isn't here. The street behind us feels different now. Not changed. Acknowledged. Like it knows we've stopped pretending we don't understand it, and somewhere beyond it, whatever has been watching stops pretending too. The feeling of being measured doesn't fade. It sharpens. Rory starts walking. I follow. Not because I choose to blindly, but because staying still suddenly feels like agreement with something neither of us has fully named yet. And as we move together, the world around us begins to behave like it is recalculating what we are allowed to become next. We move, but it doesn't feel like escape. It feels like translation. Every step Rory takes beside me changes the way the street understands us, like proximity itself is rewriting how the world is allowed to interpret what we are. The air no longer feels like it's simply surrounding us. It feels like it's negotiating. I keep my eyes forward because looking too long at anything makes it shift in ways I don't trust. Rory doesn't speak for a while. Neither do I. The silence between us isn't empty. It's layered, like there are conversations happening underneath it that we're not fully permitted to hear yet. Still, I feel him there in a way I can't ignore. Not touching me, not guiding me, just existing close enough that my thoughts stop unraveling quite as fast as they were when I was alone. That alone tells me everything has changed. We turn a corner without deciding to turn it. The street rearranges itself around the movement like it had been waiting for that specific choice to exist. I notice it too late to pretend otherwise. Rory exhales quietly. Yeah, he says under his breath, like he's confirming a pattern he's seen before and doesn't like remembering. It's doing that thing again. I glance at him. What thing? He doesn't answer immediately. Instead, he scans the space ahead, eyes narrowing slightly, like he's listening to something I can't hear yet. Then he speaks carefully, rewriting the route after we commit to it. The words land heavy in my chest. I stop walking. Rory stops with me immediately, like he was expecting it. That tells me more than anything else has so far. The street ahead looks normal again. That's the worst part. It always looks normal after it does something impossible, like it's trying to convince me I misinterpreted it. I shake my head slightly. This doesn't make sense, I say. Rory's expression tightens, but not in disagreement, in recognition. It doesn't have to, he replies. That should make me more afraid than it does. Instead, something in me settles, not calm, not acceptance, something more like alignment, as if my mind is finally matching the frequency of what's happening around us instead of fighting it. I don't like that realization. Rory steps closer again, lowering his voice. They're not reacting to where we are, he says. They're reacting to what we notice. My stomach tightens. What does that mean? I ask, even though part of me already understands and doesn't want to. Rory hesitates for the first time. That hesitation feels important. It means awareness is the trigger, he says finally. Not movement, act, just recognition. The air around us feels thinner after that, like the world is adjusting to the idea that we've understood something it didn't want fully understood yet. I look down at my hands briefly. They feel real. That's the only comfort I can find right now. Rory looks past me suddenly, eyes locking onto something I can't see. I follow his gaze instinctively. At first, there's nothing. Then I feel it. A shift, not in the street, in attention itself, like something that had been observing us from a distance has just leaned in closer. Rory's posture changes instantly. Don't look directly at it, he says. I don't ask what it is, because I already feel it arriving, not physically, conceptually. The space ahead of us feels denser now, like meaning itself is compressing into form. I keep my eyes slightly lowered, but my awareness expands anyway. I can feel the structure of the street starting to lose consistency again, like reality is struggling to maintain a single interpretation of itself. Rory grabs my wrist lightly, not pulling, anchoring. We move now, he says. I nod once. We run, not fast at first, because speed doesn't matter yet. What matters is continuity. Staying aligned, not breaking focus. The world reacts immediately. The street ahead elongates slightly, then corrects itself, then hesitates, like it doesn't know which version of distance is allowed. I hear something behind us that might not be a sound at all, more like an interruption in silence. Rory doesn't look back. "Keep going," he says. "My lungs burn, but not from exertion. From something closer to cognitive strain, like my mind is processing too many versions of the same space at once." We turn another corner. This time, the street doesn't wait for us to choose. It shifts preemptively. Rory swears under his breath. "That's new," he mutters. I don't ask what he means. I can feel it. The environment is learning faster now, adapting, predicting. We are no longer moving through it. We are being simulated inside it. And then Rory stops abruptly. I almost collide with him. He raises a hand slightly, and I freeze immediately. Ahead of us, the street looks normal again. Too normal. Perfectly normal in a way that feels like a trap designed by something that understands exactly what normal is supposed to reassure. Rory leans closer to me. His voice is barely there. "They've learned the shape of us moving together," he says. My throat tightens. So what now? He looks at me, and for the first time, I see something sharper behind his expression. Not fear. Calculation under pressure. "Now," he says quietly, "we stop being predictable." The world feels like it is holding its breath again, and somewhere beyond what I can see, something adjusts its focus one more time, waiting to see what we will do when it can no longer guess us correctly. It happens without warning, in the way real danger never announces itself with ceremony. One moment Rory is beside me, moving with that strange steadiness he has when the world feels unstable. The next, the air fractures in a way I only recognise after it's already too late. There's a faint sound, not loud, not dramatic, just wrong. Rory's body reacts before mine does. His shoulders tense, his head turning slightly as if trying to locate the source of a thought that doesn't belong in the open air. "Don't," he starts. But the sentence never finishes. A sharp motion cuts through the space between us. I see it too late to understand it properly. A thin line of movement, almost invisible, crossing the distance between a shadowed angle of the street and his shoulder. Rory jolts, not from impact alone, but from recognition of impact. His hand goes to the spot instantly, like his body knows something foreign has entered it before his mind fully catches up. Then his balance shifts, just slightly at first, like the world has asked him to lean. He resists. For a second, I think he will stay standing. His eyes find mine across the small distance between us, and something passes through them that I don't have a name for yet. Not panic, not confusion, a kind of immediate calculation that ends too quickly. "They're faster than I thought," he says, and his voice is already different, softer at the edges, slipping. My chest tightens instantly. "Rory," I say, stepping forward. He raises a hand slightly, not toward me, but toward the space around us. A warning gesture. Not for me, for the environment, for what is still hidden inside it. Then his knees buckle, not collapsing violently, not dramatically, just lowering, like gravity has changed its opinion of him. I reach him before he hits the ground. I catch him under his arm, but the weight of him is already wrong. Not physically heavy. Something else. Like his presence is no longer fully participating in resisting motion. His breath is still there, but it's slower now, measuring itself. "Sedative," he mutters, almost like he's naming a concept rather than experiencing it. I tighten my grip. "What do I do?" I ask, and I hate how small my voice sounds in the open air now. His head tilts slightly toward me. For a moment, he focuses again. Just enough. "Don't. Stay visible," he says, and then his body sags further. The world around us doesn't rush in. It doesn't need to. It already knows the outcome. I try to pull him back, but there's a presence closing in from the edges of the street, not running, not rushing, just arriving with certainty that makes resistance feel like delay rather than prevention. I look up. Shadows move where there should only be distance. No clear faces, no clear identities. Just function. And something in me understands immediately that this is not a street-level event. This is procedural. Rory's weight shifts again in my arms. His eyes are still open, but they're no longer fully focused on me. "Destiny," he says, and my name sounds different in his voice now, like it has to travel through something thick to reach me. "I'm still here," I say quickly, like saying it can hold him in place. His mouth moves slightly. "They know who we are," he repeats, softer now, like the sentence is becoming harder to keep intact. "We've got trouble." And then his head lowers, not unconscious in a sudden collapse, more like being guided out of awareness, step by step. I don't know how long I hold him before the decision is taken out of my hands. The approach is quiet, controlled. A pressure from behind, a restraint that doesn't feel like physical contact until it's already locked into place around me. I struggle immediately, but it's not a struggle that changes anything. My arms are separated from Rory gently but firmly, like I'm being corrected rather than punished. I see him being taken, not dragged, transported. His body is lifted with a precision that feels rehearsed, as if this exact scenario has been practiced until it became routine. I reach forward instinctively. My movement is stopped before it completes, not violently, efficiently. The last thing I see of Rory on the street is his head tilted slightly toward me, eyes half-lidded, still trying to stay present longer than the sedative allows. Then he is gone from the open air, and I am not. The transition is not a journey. It is an absence of continuity. One moment there is streetlight and air and fractured silence, and the next there is structure. Enclosed space, controlled temperature, a kind of artificial calm that feels less like safety and more like containment, dressed in professionalism. I am standing. I think I'm standing, but I don't remember arriving. There are people nearby, though I only register them as function before I register them as human. Their movement is efficient, their attention divided between observation and procedure. Rory is not with me. That is the only fact that fully stabilizes. My breathing sharpens. No, I say, though I don't know what I'm refusing yet. A voice answers me, calm, measured, not unkind, just distant in a way that suggests emotional proximity is not part of its job description. He will be stable shortly, the voice says. I turn. A man stands a short distance away, watching me with the kind of attention that doesn't waste energy on unnecessary movement. His presence is anchored, certain in a way that makes everything else in the room feel like it is still being decided. McCormick, I don't know how I know the name, but I do. He looks past me briefly toward where Rory has been taken, then back again as if confirming I am the remaining variable worth studying. He responded exactly as expected, he says quietly. My stomach tightens. Where is he? I ask. McCormick tilts his head slightly, like the question is interesting but not urgent. Contained, he replies. The word lands too cleanly. Contained, not injured, not rescued, not lost. Contained. My hands curl without me deciding to do it. Something in the room responds to that tension, subtle shifts in attention around me, like the environment is recording emotional variants for later analysis. McCormick steps closer, not invading, but closing distance in increments that feel deliberate. He's resilient, he says, almost conversationally. More than we projected. That will be useful. Useful. The word makes something in me go cold. I take a step forward before I fully decide to move. Let me see him, I say. McCormick studies me for a moment. Not in refusal, in evaluation. Then he glances toward a side corridor. Not yet, he says. The simplicity of it is what makes it unbearable. Not yet. As if time is negotiable, but outcome is not. I turn my head slightly, trying to orient myself within the space. It is not a prison in the obvious sense. It is too clean for that, too precise. Everything placed with intention that removes the need for visible restraint. McCormick watches me closely. You're not like him, he says after a moment. I look back at him sharply. What does that mean? He doesn't answer immediately. Instead, he studies me the way someone studies a phenomenon that is behaving slightly outside predicted bounds. It means you're still responsive, he says finally. That can change. Something inside the room shifts again, almost imperceptibly, like agreement forming in the structure of the place itself. I feel it then. Rory is somewhere nearby. Not in distance I can measure, in proximity I can sense. And whatever this place is, it is already deciding what we're going to become inside it. Chapter 6. Aurora. We keep running, but something has changed in the way the world responds to us. It's no longer just resistance or pursuit. It's recognition. Every rooftop we cross feels slightly more aware that we exist inside it. Like the city is no longer an environment, but an observing structure adjusting its own expectations in real time. Rory feels it too. I don't need the bond to know that anymore. His posture shifts subtly with every landing, not fatigue, not fear, but recalibration, like he's constantly updating the rules in his head while we move. They're tightening the model, he sends. I glance at him mid-run. The model, not the city, he replies. Us. That lands heavier than it should. We leap another gap. The wind tears past my ears, sharp enough to force my focus into the present again. My body reacts before my thoughts do, landing hard, knees absorbing impact, breath sharp in my chest. But even impact feels slightly delayed now, like reality is buffering. Below us, the agents are no longer scattered. They've consolidated, not chasing, positioning. Rory stops abruptly on the next rooftop. I stop with him. That pause feels dangerous, not because we're exposed, because we're being processed. The air ahead of us tightens in a way I can't fully describe. Not a wall, not a barrier, a decision that hasn't fully finished forming. Rory's gaze locks forward. I feel his attention extend through the bond, probing the structure ahead. Then he stiffens. That reaction alone tells me everything. What is it? I ask. His answer comes slower this time. They're not blocking us, he says. A pause. They're predicting the only version of us that survives contact. My stomach drops. That's not possible, I send. His silence is immediate, not denial, confirmation. The rooftop beneath us hums faintly now. Not sound, not vibration. Something closer to informational pressure, like the surface itself is holding unresolved outcomes. I take a step back without meaning to. Rory doesn't. Instead, he does something I don't expect. He steps forward into it. I reach for him instantly through the bond. Don't. But he's already halfway across the invisible threshold. The air reacts, not explosively, precisely, like a system executing a correction. For a split second, I see multiple versions of him, standing, falling, redirected, absorbed, all possibilities overlapping before collapsing into one. He stumbles, just slightly, then steadies himself. My breath catches. Rory looks back at me, and I feel it immediately through the bond. This isn't a trap. It's a selection field. They're forcing convergence points, he sends. I don't understand. He exhales once controlled. Only one trajectory survives it, he clarifies. Everything else collapses. A chill runs through me. You're saying, his eyes tighten slightly. Yes, we are being reduced, not killed. Simplified. The agents below shift again. Closer now. No urgency in them anymore, because urgency implies uncertainty. And they don't have uncertainty anymore. Rory steps back toward me again, rejoining the safe zone between us where the field doesn't fully stabilize. The moment he does, the pressure shifts again. The model recalibrates. I feel it happen. Rory notices too. They're reacting to pairing, he says quietly. I look at him. What does that mean? His jaw tightens. It means togetherness is a variable they can't finalize. That should sound hopeful. It doesn't. Because I can feel the system testing that idea already, trying to determine whether we are strength or anomaly or error. Below us, the agents stop moving entirely, every one of them, synchronized stillness, waiting, not for us to act, for the system to decide what action we are allowed to take next. Rory's hand brushes mine again, brief, deliberate, not comfort, anchoring. Then he sends one last thought into me, quieter than the rest. They're close to finalizing us. I swallow. And for the first time, I understand what he means by that. We are no longer escaping. We are being resolved. Not because I think, because the bond pulls me forward like gravity has finally learned my name. Rory is already running again the moment I commit to motion, like the pause never existed. Like hesitation is something neither of us can afford to acknowledge for longer than a breath. The rooftop beneath us blurs into a sequence of impact and release. Land, push, leap. Land, push, leap. The rhythm becomes less like choice and more like necessity, as if the city has narrowed itself into a single acceptable line of movement, and we are simply trying not to fall off it. Below, the agents respond instantly, not faster than us, smoother. Their movement stops feeling like pursuit and starts feeling like coordination with something larger than them. Like they are no longer individuals at all, just distributed points of a single decision-making process. I feel it before I understand it. They aren't reacting to where we are, they're reacting to where we are becoming. Rory shifts slightly ahead of me on the next rooftop. And I sense the adjustment in him immediately. Not physical strain, cognitive pressure. They're mapping divergence, he sends. I tighten my focus. Divergence from what? His answer is almost immediate. From collapse. That word doesn't belong in motion. It lands anyway. We cross another gap. The distance feels wrong again, like it recalculates mid-air depending on whether I believe I can make it. My body makes the jump before my mind finishes agreeing. That's happening more often now. Rory lands slightly ahead and turns his head just enough to track me without slowing. The bond between us pulses once, stronger than before, not emotional, structural, like something inside the system is actively measuring our synchronization. They're isolating prediction pathways, he sends. I land beside him. My breath is sharp now, but not from exhaustion alone, from interpretation. Because every time he explains something, it feels less like information and more like confirmation that the world is behaving correctly according to rules I never learned. We don't stop moving. Stopping feels like permission. And nothing about this feels like it's asking for permission anymore. Ahead, the rooftops narrow. Buildings rise closer together, creating a corridor of broken geometry between them. The sky above is still visible, but reduced, framed like something being observed through constraint. Rory slows slightly, not uncertainty. Assessment. I feel him scanning forward through the bond again, deeper than before. Then he hesitates. Just for a fraction. That hesitation is enough to make my stomach tighten. What? I send immediately. His answer doesn't come right away, and that delay tells me more than words ever could. Then, they've learned the shape of our coordination. I don't respond, because I already feel it. The space ahead is wrong in a way I can't fully lock onto visually. Not blocked, not open. Pre-structured, like the outcome is already there and we're just being guided into realizing it. Rory steps forward anyway, and the world reacts, not violently, correctively. The corridor tightens, angles shift, distance becomes conditional. I step forward to instinctively matching him, and the bond between us flares again. Immediate resistance follows, not from outside, from the structure itself. I feel it trying to separate us, not physically, conceptually. Rory feels it at the same moment I do. His hand snaps out, catching mine, instant grounding. The moment we connect, the system stutters, just briefly, but enough. Rory exhales sharply. They can't stabilize us while we're synchronized, he sends. My chest tightens. So they split us? A pause. Then they try. Below, movement resumes. Agents repositioning, not closing in, reconfiguring, like the chase has been replaced with something more precise. We don't run yet. We wait, just long enough to feel the next shift forming. And when it does, it feels like the city itself has decided to take a different shape around us. We step forward together, and the rooftop feels like it inhales, not physically, structurally, like the space itself is recalculating what together is allowed to mean in real time. Rory feels it instantly. I feel him tighten in the bond before I even register the change in the air. They've locked on to coherence, he sends. My throat tightens. Coherence of what? His eyes stay forward. Us. That word lands differently now. Not emotional, technical. Like we've stopped being two people and started being a measurable condition inside something larger. We move anyway. Carefully now. Not slower because we're afraid, but because speed is no longer the thing being tested. The rooftop ahead doesn't behave like terrain anymore. It behaves like decision space. Every step we take feels like selecting from options that already exist but haven't fully committed to being real yet. Below us, agents shift positions. Not chasing. Positioning. That's worse. Pursuit implies uncertainty. Positioning implies outcome planning. I focus on Rory through the bond. It's easier than looking anywhere else. The connection between us is still intact, but it's no longer just communication. It feels like a shared edge of perception being pressed from both sides by something trying to define where it begins and ends. They're narrowing variables, Rory sends. I swallow. What does that mean for us? A pause. Less ways to exist without being caught. The rooftop widens ahead, but it doesn't feel like opportunity. It feels like exposure, like the space is intentionally offering more surface area to observe us failing. We stop at the center. Not because we decide to, because the system pauses with us. The silence here is different, not absence, containment. Even the wind feels structured now, flowing in patterns that avoid interfering with whatever is being measured between us. Rory's hand shifts closer to mine without touching. I feel the bond flare in response. The environment reacts immediately. Not aggressively, correctively. They're testing separation pressure, Rory sends. My chest tightens. How? He looks at me for the first time fully by seeing how long we resist it. That lands in a way I don't like, because it implies endurance is part of the experiment. We move again, Together. The moment we do, the rooftop adjusts subtly, not blocking us, not guiding us exactly, more like recalibrating expectations in real time based on whether we maintain synchronization. Below, the agents stop again. Perfect stillness. Waiting. I can feel it now. They're not reacting to movement. They're reacting to divergence. Rory steps slightly ahead of me on the next stretch. Instantly, I feel pressure shift. Not between us, around us, like the system is testing whether we stabilize better apart. Rory notices immediately. They're measuring desync response, he sends. I tighten focus so we stay aligned. A faint ripple through the bond. Yes, we continue forward. The rooftop corridor narrows. Buildings rise closer together, compressing space into a controlled channel. The sky above is still visible, but it feels reduced, like even openness is being rationed. I start noticing something subtle. Every time I adjust my pace, the environment responds slightly before I complete the movement. Predictive correction. Rory feels it too. They're learning micro-patterns, he sends. I glance at him. So what now? His expression tightens slightly. We stop giving them patterns. The words don't come with explanation. They don't need to. We change rhythm, not randomly. Deliberately irregular. The effect is immediate. The rooftop hesitates. Just for a fraction of a second. That hesitation is enough for me to understand something important. The system is fast, but not infinite. Rory moves again, and I follow without syncing perfectly this time. Slight offset, controlled disruption. The bond between us shifts, but does not break. Instead, it adapts, and that adaptation causes a reaction below. Agents begin repositioning faster, still not chasing, adjusting, like the system is compensating for uncertainty entering the model. They don't like that, I send. Rory replies immediately. No, we reach another gap. This one wider, more exposed. Rory stops at the edge. I stop beside him. We don't speak. We both feel it now. This is a threshold, not physical, structural. Below, the agents shift again, forming a loose perimeter around the area ahead, waiting for commitment. Rory exhales slowly. They're preparing a collapse trigger zone, he sends. My stomach tightens. What happens if we cross it? His eyes stay forward. Then they force resolution. I don't ask what resolution means. I already know it's not escape. We stand there for a moment longer than we should. The bond between us pulses steadily. Not fear. Alignment. Rory shifts closer to me. The system reacts instantly. Pressure increases around the space between us again, like it's trying to define separation as default state. Rory notices. They're isolating linkage density, he sends. I swallow. So we can't stay close. A pause. Then we can. We just can't let them predict it. That's the key, not distance. Predictability. We move. Together again, but not in sync, not in pattern. The rooftop reacts more slowly now, hesitation increasing. Agents below begin to shift upwards slightly, not fully engaged. Preparing. Rory grips my hand briefly, not comfort. Anchor. The bond surges, the system stutters, just for a moment. Enough. This time the city doesn't fully agree on what we are doing. We don't stop running, not even when the rooftop corridor finally gives way to a maintenance access door that shouldn't have been there in the first place. It appears the way everything else has been appearing lately, like the world is no longer revealing itself, but editing itself in front of us. Rory sees it at the same time I do. No hesitation. He's already moving toward it before I fully register that it exists. The bond between us tightens as we reach it, not because we're syncing, but because the environment is forcing synchronization as a requirement for passage. He places a hand on the door. I feel it react immediately, not mechanical resistance, conceptual acknowledgement, like the door is confirming identity rather than opening. Then it clicks. We don't discuss it, we go in. The air inside is wrong in a different way, not open, not exposed, controlled, sterile in a way that feels like it's trying to erase the idea that anything outside this space ever existed. The corridor stretches ahead under harsh, clinical lighting that hums faintly in a rhythm that doesn't match human infrastructure. Rory slows slightly beside me. I feel his attention shift immediately through the bond. This isn't part of the city, he sends. I glance at him. What is it then? A pause. Then, containment infrastructure. That word sits heavy between us. Containment implies purpose. We move forward anyway. The corridor bends without geometry consistency. Angles feel slightly misaligned, like the space was constructed based on interpretation rather than measurement. We reach a second door. This one is already open. Rory stops at the threshold. I feel something from him before I see anything. Not fear, shock. Sharp and immediate. He steps inside. I follow. The room is larger than the corridor suggests it should be. Too large, too quiet, and in the centre, a table, metal, clean, clinical, something is strapped to it. At first, my mind refuses to categorize it properly, not because it's unfamiliar, because it's too familiar in the wrong text. I've got a body, human-shaped, but wrong in subtle ways that don't fully resolve into certainty until I step closer. Grey, that's what I think first. Skin too pale, too uniform, like detail has been smoothed out of it. Limbs positioned with restraint straps that look designed for something that wasn't expected to move like a human at all. Its chest rises faintly, alive, barely. Rory freezes beside me. I feel his entire perception narrow instantly, like the bond between us is being compressed into a single point of recognition. Then he speaks, not through the bond, out loud. "My God," he says. His voice cracks slightly at the edge. "They're going after everyone!" The words echo in the sterile room longer than they should. I step closer to the table before I realise I've moved. The Grey's head shifts slightly. Not fully conscious, but aware enough to register presence, its eyes open halfway. Not focused, not stable, just enough to acknowledge us. Rory moves beside me instantly, scanning the room. His attention is sharper now, less escape-oriented, more diagnostic. "They're not studying it," he sends. I look at him. "What do you mean?" His jaw tightens. "They've already classified it." A pause. "This is implementation." That word doesn't belong in this room, but it fits too well. The Grey shifts again on the table, a faint sound escaping it that isn't quite speech. Not quite pain either, just output. I feel something tighten in my chest. "Is it like us?" I send. Rory doesn't answer immediately. That silence is answer enough. Then, yes, simple. Final. The room hums faintly. Not machines, infrastructure, like the building itself is participating in observation. Rory steps closer to the table now. Careful, controlled. The Grey reacts slightly to his presence. Not resistance, recognition. I feel it through the bond immediately. A resonance. Weak. Fragmented, but similar. Rory exhales sharply. "They're not just capturing anomalies," he sends. I swallow. What are they doing? His eyes stay on the Grey, harvesting convergence templates. The phrase makes no immediate sense, but the implication does. I look around the room properly for the first time, noticing details I didn't register before, monitoring panels, data streams, not displaying numbers, displaying patterns, behavioral sequences, like the room is not observing a subject, it is recording a system response. Rory steps back slightly from the table, his hand brushes mine briefly, grounding again, but now it feels heavier, less reassurance, more realization. "They've scaled this," he sends quietly. My chest tightens. "How far?" He finally looks at me, and I see it in his expression before he says it. Not everywhere. Already. The Grey on the table exhales weakly. The sound is almost human. Almost. The room remains silent after it, too silent, like it is waiting for us to understand what comes next. And I do. Slowly, reluctantly. We are not the only ones being watched anymore. Chapter 7. Eclipse. I woke to the faint hum of the city, a distant rhythm I couldn't quite place, like something vast and mechanical breathing beneath layers of concrete and steel. It wasn't loud, it didn't demand attention. It simply existed, steady and patient, as though it had been waiting for me to notice it all along. My head throbbed faintly, a dull echo of sleepless hours, but even that discomfort felt secondary to something deeper, something threading through me with quiet insistence. A pulse, not my own. Not entirely. It lingered in my chest like a second heartbeat, softer, more deliberate. Rory. The connection brushed against my mind again, feather-light but unmistakable, like fingertips trailing along the edge of a thought. Even now, even separated by walls and distance and whatever dangers lurked between us, he was there, not physically, not visibly, but undeniably. I rolled onto my side, the thin mattress shifting beneath me, its meagre softness doing nothing to hide the unforgiving floor below. A sliver of moonlight slipped through the dusty blinds, cutting across the room in a pale, fractured line. It painted the walls in muted grey, turned shadows into something heavier, something that felt almost aware. I should have felt alone in that room. I should have felt afraid. But I didn't, because beneath everything else, beneath the silence and the dim light and the uncertainty pressing in from all sides, there was him. That faint, violet-tinged presence in my mind, steady as breath, patient as time. It filled the empty spaces, softened the edges of fear until they blurred into something almost manageable. Safe. Not completely, not entirely, but enough. I closed my eyes, letting myself sink into it, letting the connection stretch gently outward. It wasn't something I could see. It wasn't something I could hold. But it was there, a thread woven between us, humming with quiet life. He was awake. I felt it immediately, the alertness, the stillness that wasn't quite still. Rory moved carefully, his thoughts measured, each step placed with intention. Somewhere nearby, he paced in silence. His awareness sweeping across his surroundings like a quiet storm held just beneath the surface. Every breath he took brushed faintly against my mind. Every shift in his focus rippled through me. It was overwhelming in a way that didn't feel overwhelming at all. Not invasive, not intrusive, just shared, like standing in the same room, even when we weren't. A quiet awe stirred in my chest. Telepathy wasn't just a connection. It was closeness in its purest form. I tried to sit up, but my body protested immediately. Muscles tightened, soreness blooming from yesterday's chaos. The rooftops, the leaps, the moments where gravity felt more like a suggestion than a rule. My limbs felt heavy, worn down, yet beneath that exhaustion was something brighter, alive. More alive than I had ever been. My chest fluttered, not from pain, not from fear, but from him, from the memory of his presence, the way his thoughts brushed mine, the faint warmth that always accompanied him, like a quiet glow. Destiny. His voice didn't reach my ears. It didn't need to. It unfolded directly in my mind, soft and unmistakable, like a note played on a string only I could hear. You're awake. Good. I swallowed, the simple act grounding me as I focused on him, on that steady pulse that felt like an anchor in shifting water. I'm awake. I sent back, my thoughts trembling slightly as they reached for him. Are you safe? There was a pause, not silence, but something softer, like a breath held just long enough to matter. Then a ripple of amusement brushed through me, subtle but warm. As safe as I can be. The answer didn't reassure me as much as I wanted it to. But it was honest, and honesty, right now, mattered more than comfort. But we can't stay here long, he continued, the tone shifting, sharpening just slightly. Agents are moving faster now. Their awareness of me, of my abilities, is growing. My stomach tightened, the words settling into me like cold water. Faster? Already? They've learned something new already? I asked, the question rushing forward before I could temper it. Yes, no hesitation, no uncertainty. You've seen how far they'll go. They won't hesitate. I pressed my hands against my face, dragging in a slow breath that didn't quite steady me the way I wanted it to. The reality of it all pressed in again. Agents' pursuit, the constant sense of being watched even when no one was there. And yet, even with that fear coiling tightly in my chest, something else burned brighter. Determination, sharp, unyielding. He was alive. I was alive. And whatever this connection was, whatever strange, impossible thread had bound us together, it wasn't something they could cut. Not easily. Maybe not at all. I pushed myself up despite the ache, forcing my body to cooperate. The moment I steadied, I felt him again, stronger this time, closer. Stay close, he sent. The words weren't a command. They were instinct, and I followed them without thinking. I moved toward the corner of the room, just as he stepped from the shadows, as though the darkness itself had shaped him and then reluctantly let him go. He stood there, still and composed, like he had always been part of the space, and I had simply failed to notice. Moonlight caught in his hair, silver threads glinting faintly as he shifted. His eyes found mine immediately, violet, endless, carrying that same quiet awareness that always made it feel like he was seeing more than what was in front of him. You move slower than usual, he murmured. The words reached my ears this time, but they still echoed through my mind, layered, inseparable from the connection between us. His gaze flicked over me, assessing, protective in a way he never said out loud. I need you alert, he added, focused. I nodded, even though I knew he already felt the answer in me. I am focused. I am ready. The room fell into silence again, but it wasn't empty. It felt charged, like something just beneath the surface was waiting to break through. Outside, faint metallic sounds echoed, distant but unmistakable. Agents. I felt them before I fully registered the sound, their presence brushing against the edges of Rory's awareness. Cold, precise, searching. A shiver ran through me, and before I could stop myself, I stepped closer to him. The distance between us vanished in an instant. He didn't touch me, not exactly, but his presence wrapped around me like something solid, something protective. The connection deepened, his thoughts brushing mine with quiet reassurance, steadying the spike of fear before it could fully take hold. "We need to move soon," he said softly. His voice carried calm certainty, the kind that didn't need to be questioned. "There's a safe route," he continued, "a path they won't anticipate." I leaned into him without thinking, my forehead resting lightly against his shoulder. The contact was small, almost nothing, but through the bond, it felt like everything. "I trust you." The words slipped into his mind as easily as breath. "I'm ready." For a moment, something shifted in him. A small smile touched his lips, subtle but real, and that faint violet warmth flickered across his cheeks, visible even in the dim light. "That's all I need," he sent. "Only trust me, Destiny." A pause, then softer. "Always trust me." We moved like a secret the city hadn't learned how to keep. Not running, not yet. Just slipping, quiet, deliberate, like shadows remembering how to walk. Every step I took felt guided before I even chose it, as though my body had begun listening to something deeper than instinct. Rory's mind brushed mine in soft currents, subtle adjustments, invisible nudges that turned hesitation into certainty. Broken tiles cracked softly beneath our feet as we crossed the abandoned floor. Rusted machinery loomed around us like skeletons of a forgotten age, silent witnesses to our escape. The air tasted faintly of dust and old metal, each breath grounding me just enough to keep fear from rising too far. I didn't need to ask where to step. I already knew. His thoughts carried direction like starlight through fog, dim but unmistakable. Left. Pause. I obeyed without thinking. A distant clang echoed somewhere below us, sharp enough to make my pulse jump. The agents weren't wandering anymore. They were closing in with purpose, tightening their search like a net drawn slowly through water. "They're getting closer," I whispered, though the words felt unnecessary. He already knew. He always knew. "I know," he replied quietly, his voice a calm thread in the rising tension. But beneath it, through the bond, I felt something more intricate. Calculations unfolding faster than thought. Possibilities branching and collapsing in silent patterns. He wasn't just reacting. He was predicting. We reached a narrow stairwell, its metal railing cold beneath my fingertips as we descended. Each step groaned faintly under our weight, the sound far too loud in the stillness. My heart pounded harder with every echo, but his presence wrapped around it, smoothing the rhythm, turning panic into something sharper. Focused. The door at the bottom opened to the outside. The city greeted us like a storm that hadn't decided whether to break. Wind swept through the alley, carrying distant noise, sirens, engines, the restless murmur of a place that never truly slept. Above us, rooftops stretched like a jagged horizon, layered in shadow and dim light. "We go up," Rory said. Of course we did. Up was freedom. Up was where the city lost its grip on those who knew how to move through it. The fire escape rattled slightly as we climbed, each step a delicate balance between speed and silence. My muscles protested again, exhaustion pulling at me, but something stronger pushed back. Him. The bond carried me forward, a current I couldn't fight even if I wanted to. When we reached the rooftop, the world opened. Light stretched in every direction, a sea of flickering constellations scattered across concrete and glass. The sky above was dim, clouded, but the moon still carved faint silver into the edges of everything it touched. And below, movement. Dark vehicles slid into position at the far end of the block, their presence too deliberate to be anything but a threat. Figures stepped out, their silhouettes sharp and purposeful. Agents. Too many. Too close. My breath hitched, fear tightening its grip for a brief, dangerous moment. Then his hand found mine. Warm, steady, real. The contact grounded me instantly, but it was the pulse behind it, the quiet certainty flowing from him into me, that truly anchored everything in place. Now, he sent. The word wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Trust me completely. Follow my rhythm. I didn't hesitate. I didn't question. I moved. We ran. The rooftop blurred beneath us as we sprinted forward, our steps falling into perfect synchronization. I didn't think about where to land, where to leap, where to turn. I felt it. His awareness stretched ahead of us, mapping each movement before it happened, threading precision into every action. When we reached the edge, I didn't slow. We jumped. For a fraction of a second, the world fell away. Then my feet hit the next rooftop, solid and sure. Again and again. We crossed the skyline like a pair of echoes chasing each other, faster than fear could keep up. You make it look effortless, I breathed, the words slipping out between gasps as adrenaline surged through me. He shook his head slightly, a faint, almost shy warmth flickering across his expression. I make it look effortless because we're together, he sent. Because you're with me. The words struck deeper than they should have, or maybe exactly as deep as they were meant to. The wind tore through my hair as we veered toward another fire escape, descending in a controlled slide. Metal groaned beneath our weight, but we were already moving again before the sound could linger. The alley swallowed us whole. Darkness closed in, tight and immediate, the space barely wide enough for both of us to move side by side. My chest heaved, lungs burning, but I didn't stop. Not when he didn't. Not when the bond kept pulling me forward. We slowed only when the shadows deepened enough to hide us completely. For a moment, everything stilled. No footsteps behind us, no voices, just breath. Shared, uneven, alive. You're incredible, I said, the words quieter now, almost lost in the narrow space between us. I hadn't meant to say it out loud, but it was true. Every impossible movement, every perfect decision, every moment where we should have failed but didn't. It all pointed back to him, to us. His eyes softened slightly, that familiar violet warmth flickering again as he looked at me. You're incredible too, he sent. The thought brushed against mine gently, but it carried weight. Braver than anyone else, stronger than you know. And then quieter. And you make me human. The words settled into me slowly, like something fragile finding its place. Human. The idea of it, the meaning behind it, the way he said it. It wasn't simple, it wasn't casual. It was everything he didn't say out loud. A shiver ran through me, but it wasn't from cold. It was from the closeness of it. The way our connection blurred the line between where I ended and he began. I stepped closer without thinking, drawn by something deeper than intention. I love you, I sent. The words didn't feel dramatic. They didn't feel sudden. They felt inevitable. His response came instantly, warm and steady, threading through me like light through glass. I love you too. And beneath it, I'll protect you. Always. A siren cut through the night somewhere beyond the alley, sharp and distant, but moving closer. Reality snapped back into place. We weren't safe. Not yet. We can't stay. He sent, the urgency returning, though the warmth never left. Move with me. We ran again, through twisting alleys and narrow passages, across broken pavement and forgotten spaces where the city seemed to forget itself. Every movement fell into rhythm, every step guided by the silent conversation between our minds. At one point my foot slipped, just slightly, but enough. My balance faltered, the ground tilting beneath me as panic flared, and then his hand tightened around mine. I've got you. The reassurance wasn't just words, it was force. It steadied me instantly, pulling me back into alignment before I could fall. Always. I breathed out slowly, letting the moment pass, letting him hold that fear so it didn't have to stay inside me. Nothing else mattered. Not the agents, not the chase, not the danger pressing in from every direction, only this. The bond. The rhythm. The impossible breakable thread that turned two people into something singular, something whole. The city thinned as we moved, like a heartbeat slowing after a sprint. Lights grew sparser. The noise softened, losing its sharp edges until it became something distant and dreamlike. Even the wind seemed to quiet, as if the night itself were watching us slip through its ribs, careful not to disturb whatever fragile silence we had carved out. We climbed again, another staircase, another rooftop, another breath stolen from the world below. This one was different, wider, emptier, a rooftop that felt abandoned, not just by people, but by purpose. I slowed first this time, my legs finally demanding acknowledgement. The adrenaline that had carried me began to ebb, leaving behind a trembling exhaustion that settled into my bones like cold water seeping into cracks. Rory didn't let go of my hand. He never did, not fully. Even when his grip loosened, even when our fingers barely brushed, the connection remained, stronger than touch, stronger than proximity. We reached the edge. Below us, a small park stretched quietly between buildings, its pathways silvered faintly by moonlight. Trees swayed gently, their shadows spilling across the ground like ink. It felt untouched, removed from everything we had just escaped. For a moment, the world held its breath. I sank down near the ledge, my chest rising and falling in uneven waves. The cool surface beneath me grounded me, pulled me back into my body in a way I hadn't fully felt since we started running. "You're everything," I whispered. The words slipped out before I could shape them into something less raw, less exposed. But I didn't take them back. I couldn't. I can't. I tried again, my voice softer now, almost fragile. "I can't imagine life without you." The admission hung in the air between us, delicate as glass. He didn't answer right away, but I felt him. The way his thoughts shifted, the way something deeper opened, something he didn't show easily, maybe didn't even fully understand himself. And then it came. Not as sound, not as speech, but as a pulse. And you'll never have to. It moved through me slowly, like warmth spreading through something that had been cold for far too long. Because I'm here. A pause. Always. The word didn't echo. It settled. It rooted itself somewhere inside me where fear couldn't reach it. I leaned toward him, closing the space that didn't feel like distance anymore. Just formality. My lips met his, soft at first, uncertain only for a fraction of a second before the connection surged, filling the moment with something far beyond touch. It wasn't just a kiss, it was everything we hadn't said, everything we didn't need to. The bond flared, bright and steady, threading our thoughts together so completely that for a brief, impossible instant, I couldn't tell where I ended and he began. "I trust you." The thought flowed into him without resistance. "I love you, always." His response wrapped around mine instantly, stronger than before, deeper, like something that had found its true shape. "Always." His arm moved around me, pulling me closer, holding me there as if the world beyond the rooftop had ceased to exist entirely. And for that moment, it had. No agents, no pursuit, no danger clawing at the edges of reality. Just us. Just the quiet rhythm of two hearts moving in perfect sync, guided by something neither of us could explain, but both of us understood completely. Time stretched, or maybe it folded. It was impossible to tell. Eventually, though, the world crept back in. It always did. The distant hum of the city returned first, soft but persistent. Then the faint echo of a siren, far away but not far enough to ignore. Rory shifted slightly, his awareness expanding again, brushing against the edges of the night. "They're still searching," he sent, quieter now, but no less certain. My chest tightened just slightly, the fragile calm fracturing at the edges, but it didn't break, not completely, because he was still there. We both were, together. "What now?" I asked, my voice steadier than I expected it to be. The question felt heavier than it sounded, not just about the next step, about everything. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked out over the city, his gaze distant, thoughtful, as though he were tracing paths no one else could see. Then slowly, "We keep moving, simple, certain, unavoidable." But beneath it something softer lingered. "Together." I nodded, even though the answer had already settled inside me before he said it. Of course we would. There was no version of this where we didn't. I pushed myself back to my feet, my body still aching, still tired, but no longer unsure. His hand found mine again. It felt natural, like it had always belonged there. We didn't rush this time. We moved with intention, crossing the rooftop toward the far side, where a fire escape waited like a quiet invitation downward. The city stretched endlessly around us, but it no longer felt overwhelming. It felt navigable, as long as we stayed connected, as long as we stayed us. Halfway across I felt it. A flicker, subtle, sharp, not his. My steps faltered slightly, my grip tightening around his hand. "Did you feel that?" I whispered. His response came instantly, his awareness sharpening. Yes. The single word carried weight. Something had shifted, not behind us, not below, around. The air itself felt different, like a storm gathering just beyond sight. "They're adapting," he added, quieter now, not just searching, learning. The realization settled heavily between us. This wasn't just a chase anymore, it was becoming something else, something more dangerous. But when I looked at him, when I felt the steady pulse of his presence threading through mine, the fear didn't take hold the way it should have. It couldn't. Not while we were still connected. "Then we adapt too," I said. The words surprised me slightly, but they felt right, felt earned. Something in his expression softened again, that faint violet warmth returning, not as hesitation, but as recognition. "You already are." And just like that, we moved again. Not just running anymore, not just surviving, becoming. The night didn't end. It unraveled. One moment we were crossing rooftops with the fragile confidence of something newly forged, and the next, the world tore itself open beneath us. I didn't remember falling asleep. I didn't remember stopping. Only the sudden, violent shift. White. Too clean, too silent. I woke with a sharp inhale, the air biting cold against my lungs. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, their sterile glow pressing down like a weight I couldn't shake. The ceiling above me stretched flat and endless, stripped of shadow, stripped of warmth. Wrong. Everything about it was wrong. My body felt heavy, sluggish, like I'd been pulled from something deeper than sleep. My thoughts lagged behind reality, trying to catch up, trying to understand how I had gone from the open sky to this sealed, artificial stillness. Rory. The name struck through me instantly, cutting through the haze. I sat up too fast, the room tilting slightly before settling into place. He wasn't there. The absence wasn't quiet. It screamed. The space beside me, empty. The air and the bond, gone. Not weakened, not distant, gone. Like reaching for a heartbeat and finding nothing but silence. Panic surged, sharp and immediate, flooding every part of me before I could even try to contain it. My chest tightened, breath coming too fast, too shallow. No. I closed my eyes, forcing myself to focus, to reach. Nothing. A void. Cold and endless. Rory. My voice broke as it left me, too small in a room that swallowed sound whole. I pushed myself to my feet, ignoring the lingering dizziness, scanning the space with growing desperation. Metal tables, equipment I didn't recognize, a single chair bolted to the floor like it had been anchored there to prevent escape. And the door, sealed, locked. My stomach twisted violently. They had him. Of course they did. They had been getting closer, adapting, learning, and now they had him. A sharp laugh escaped me, thin and fractured. Of course they did. I stumbled forward, gripping the edge of one of the tables, grounding myself against the cold surface. My fingers curled tightly against the metal, knuckles whitening as I forced my breathing to slow. Think. Don't panic. Think. I squeezed my eyes shut again, pushing harder this time, reaching past the emptiness, past the silence. Find him. Find him. Find him. Nothing answered. The void remained. And that terrified me more than anything else, because the bond wasn't something that just disappeared. It couldn't. Unless you shouldn't be here. The voice cut cleanly through the silence, cold and measured, like something sharpened for precision rather than volume. My eyes snapped open. A man stood beyond the glass wall I hadn't noticed before, his reflection merging faintly with the sterile room behind me. He stepped forward slowly, deliberate in every movement, his gaze fixed on me with an intensity that felt less like curiosity and more like dissection. Observing, analysing, reducing. "But now that you are," he continued, his lips curling into something that barely qualified as a smile. "Perhaps you'll cooperate." My grip tightened on the table. "Where is he?" I demanded. The words came out sharper than I expected, cutting through the tension with a force I didn't try to soften. His head tilted slightly, as though considering how much to reveal. "He's being prepared," he said finally. "Prepared." The word landed wrong. Heavy wrong. "For study." My stomach dropped. "You won't be able to reach him." Something inside me snapped. A laugh tore free, jagged and disbelieving. "You think you can just experiment on him?" I shot back, stepping closer to the glass, every word edged with rising fury. "You think you can take him away from me?" My pulse raced, each beat louder than the last, each one pushing against the emptiness where he should have been. The man didn't flinch, didn't react. If anything, his expression sharpened. Fascinated, like I had just proven something he already suspected. A door somewhere beyond the room slid open with a soft mechanical hiss. Footsteps. More than one. Close. I moved instantly, instinct taking over where thought might have hesitated, pressing myself into the corner out of direct sight. Breath held just long enough to listen. Too many, too organised. They weren't fumbling anymore. They knew what they were doing. And then? A flicker. Faint, fragile, but unmistakable. "Rory?" The presence struck through the void like a cracking glass, sudden and sharp and impossibly bright against the emptiness. Destiny. His voice wasn't soft this time. It wasn't distant. It was immediate. Urgent. "Listen to me." My breath caught, relief and fear colliding so violently I almost lost my footing. "I'm okay," he continued, though the strain beneath the words was impossible to miss. "But you must be careful. They'll do anything to control me." The connection flickered, unstable, like it was being forced through something that resisted it. Don't let them catch you. Trust me to get free. I'll find you, I whispered, the words barely audible, meant only for him. I'll get to you, I swear. His presence pressed closer for a moment, steadier now, grounding. You're stronger than you know. A pause. Stay calm. Think. Plan. Another flicker. I'll signal you. Then, gone again. Not completely, but reduced to something faint, distant, enough to remind me he was still there. Not enough to guide me. I forced myself to breathe, slow and deliberate, pushing the panic back down where it couldn't take control. He was alive. That was enough. That had to be enough. Minutes stretched, or maybe longer. Time lost, meaning in the sterile stillness, measured only by the hum of the lights and the distant echo of movement beyond the walls. I stayed still, watched, listened, and then I saw him, through the glass, another room beyond. Rory, strapped to a table, restraints locking his wrists in place, his body held still in a way that looked wrong on him. Unnatural, but his eyes, still sharp, still aware, still him. A faint shimmer surrounded him, barely visible, like heat rising off a surface, but I felt it more than I saw it. His telepathy, contained, restricted, but not gone, never gone. I reached for him instinctively, pushing through the bond, ignoring the resistance, the pressure pushing back. I'm here. The thought broke through, raw and immediate. I'll get you out. I swear it. His response came faster this time, sharper, more controlled. Patience. The word hit like a command wrapped in trust. Watch. Wait. I can bend this. A pause. But you mustn't interfere too soon. My hands clenched at my sides, every instinct screaming to move, to act, to break through the glass and tear him free. But the bond held me in place. Not forcing. Guiding. Trust me. The words settled into me, heavy but steady. And I did. Even now, even here, I trusted him. The man stepped closer to Rory, his attention entirely focused on what he didn't understand. You don't know what you are, he murmured, almost reverent. But we will. I bit back the surge of anger that rose in response. He doesn't belong to you. He never will. Rory's presence brushed mine again, faint but growing. Stay ready. The words carried a shift. Something was coming. Watch for it. I nodded slightly, even though he couldn't see me. Every part of me tightened, focus sharpening to a single point. And then the air changed. Not visibly, not immediately, but unmistakably. A ripple passed through the room, subtle but wrong, like reality itself had faltered for half a second and then tried to correct itself. The glass shimmered, barely. But enough. My breath caught. This was it. The moment, and I was ready. The moment didn't arrive like thunder. It unfolded like a fracture, quiet at first, so subtle it might have gone unnoticed by anyone who wasn't bound to him the way I was. But I felt it immediately, a tremor running through the invisible thread between us, a tightening of something vast and controlled. Rory. His presence surged, not outward, not wildly, but inward first, compressing, gathering like breath drawn before something irreversible. Then, destiny. Now. The word struck like a spark against dry air. Everything moved at once. The restraints on his wrists shuddered, metal groaning in protest, as if it suddenly remembered it was never meant to hold something like him. Sparks snapped across the surface, faint at first, then brighter, dancing like fleeting stars. The man in the room turned sharply, confusion flickering across his face just before it fractured into something closer to fear. What? He didn't finish. The room itself seemed to hesitate, not physically, not visibly, but something in the air bent, like space had been asked to step aside and reluctantly obeyed. The monitors flickered, the lights stuttered, and I felt it. Not just saw it, felt it. Rory's mind expanding, not violently, not chaotically, but precisely. Threads of thought reached outward, invisible and exact, slipping into locks, systems, circuits, mechanisms, touching everything without ever laying a hand on it. The restraints snapped, not explosively, quietly, like surrender. Metal twisted, split, fell away from him in broken pieces that clattered softly against the floor. He didn't rush. Of course he didn't. He moved like he already knew every outcome. Every step, every second. The man staggered back, reaching for a console, fingers fumbling with controls that no longer answered him. Stop him, he barked, voice sharp, unraveling, but there was nothing to stop. Rory was already gone, not vanished, just elsewhere, between moments, between decisions. He slipped past the agents like a thought they couldn't quite hold on to. Their movements lagged behind his, always a step too late, always reaching for something that had already shifted beyond their grasp. Then his eyes found mine, through the glass, through the room, through everything. And I didn't need words. Follow, I moved instantly. The door, locked. But the bond guided me, his awareness slipping into mine just enough to show me what I couldn't see alone. My hand found the hidden latch along the inner panel, fingers pressing in exactly the right place. Click. The door opened. The hallway stretched ahead, wore sterile and endless, lit by the same unforgiving white that made everything feel unreal. Footsteps echoed from the far end, agents converging, too close, too fast. Destiny, his voice threaded through me again, calm even now. Left. I turned without hesitation, slipping into the adjacent corridor, keeping low, every movement measured. My heartbeat thundered in my chest, but his presence cut through it, turning panic into direction. Wait! I pressed myself against the wall, breath held, every sense sharpened, voices passed, boots striking the floor in tight rhythm. Closer, closer, now. I moved, fast, silent, certain. He appeared at the far end of the hall, just as I broke into a sprint, his figure framed in flickering light, that faint violet shimmer clinging to him like something the world couldn't quite erase. Our hands met. Impact, connection. And suddenly everything aligned again. We ran. Down the corridor, through a stairwell door that slammed open before we even reached it. Metal rang against concrete as we descended, steps blurring beneath us. His telepathy wrapped around my thoughts, guiding, shielding, anticipating every movement before it happened. Down, turn, pause, go. The building seemed to unravel around us, every path opening just as we needed it, every obstacle dissolving under the weight of his focus. Shouts echoed above, behind, everywhere. But they never reached us. They couldn't, not like this. Not while we were moving as one. We hit the lower level hard, pushing through a final door that led into a service corridor. The air changed instantly, cooler, heavier, carrying the faint scent of rain and asphalt. Freedom was close. I could feel it. Wait! We stopped just before the exit, pressed into shadow as footsteps thundered past on the other side. Too many, too exposed. Rory's grip tightened slightly, his focus sharpening again. Now. The door burst open. Cold night air rushed in like a promise. We stepped into it together. The city greeted us with rain, soft at first, then steady. Droplets clung to my skin, cool and real, washing away the sterile weight of the place we had just escaped. Neon lights flickered across wet pavement, reflections bending and breaking with every ripple. Behind us, voices rose. Too late. Always too late. We moved quickly, slipping into the maze of alleys and side streets, letting the city swallow us whole. Every turn, every step, every shift in direction flowed through the bond between us, seamless and unspoken. By the time we stopped, the noise had faded, the pursuit had dissolved into distance, and for the first time since I woke in that white room, I could breathe. Really breathe. I leaned back against the damp brick wall, chest rising and falling, rain tracing quiet paths down my face. My hand was still locked with his, fingers curled tightly as if letting go might somehow undo everything we had just survived. I can't believe we did that, I whispered. The words felt fragile, like saying them too loudly might break something. Rory stepped closer, his presence warm even in the cold rain, his gaze steady in a way that made everything else feel distant. You believed, he sent softly. You followed. A pause. That's what matters. His thumb brushed lightly against my hand, grounding, real. We're stronger together, Destiny. Always. The words settled into me again, deeper this time, carved by everything we had just endured, always. I nodded, unable to find anything that felt big enough to match what I was feeling, so I didn't try. Instead, I stepped closer, closing the space between us, letting the connection speak where words couldn't. The night stretched around us, endless and alive, but no longer overwhelming. We had faced something that should have broken us, something that should have torn us apart, and it hadn't. It couldn't, because this bond, this pulse, this impossible, unwavering thread between us was stronger than anything chasing us, stronger than anything trying to control us, stronger than fear. I tightened my grip on his hand, meeting his gaze without hesitation. Always, eyes, and his answer came, steady and unbreakable, threading through me like something eternal. Always. The rain fell, the city breathed. And somewhere beneath it all, two hearts moved in perfect rhythm, untouched, unbroken, and utterly unstoppable.
Chapter 8. Mercy and Goodbye. They don't bring restraints. They don't need them. The room is quiet in a way that feels manufactured, like even sound has been filtered, reduced to only what they allow. Soft light bleeds from the ceiling, colorless and steady. No shadows. No corners. Only observation. I sit on the edge of the bed they gave me, hands resting loosely in my lap, breathing slow. They've learned already. Heart rate, pupil dilation, micromovements. Everything is data to them. Everything is a variable. Everything but me. The door opens with a soft hiss. One person enters. Not a soldier. Not like the others. A scientist. Late 30s, maybe early 40s. Clean coat, controlled posture, but I can feel the fracture underneath it. Curiosity layered over hesitation. Fear buried beneath professionalism. Interesting. He closes the door behind him, sealing us into the white. I'm Dr. Hale, he says, voice measured neutral. We're going to conduct a simple test today. Simple. That word again. I tilt my head slightly, watching him the way he watches me. You want me to use it? I say. He doesn't flinch outwardly, but inside. A ripple. Yes. Not spoken. Felt. His eyes narrow just slightly. We'd like to observe your cognitive interface. Interface. They keep renaming it. Like different words will make it less human. I let the silence stretch. He shifts his weight. There it is again, that fracture. He wants to know. More than he wants to be safe. That's the dangerous kind. I can do it, I say quietly. His attention sharpens instantly. But before I do, I continue, leaning forward just slightly. You need to understand what you're asking. He says nothing, but his pulse spikes. I feel it. The room tightens around us. Once you do this, I say, my voice steady, deliberate. There is no going back. Think about what you were doing. He swallows. Still silent. Still listening. If you do it, I continue, softer now. It will haunt you for the rest of your life. A flicker of doubt surfaces in him. Sharp, bright, quickly buried. I hold his gaze. Make the right decision, I say. Please. The word lingers longer than the others. Not calculated. Real. I know I'm just one person, I add, quieter now. But I have powers beyond human comprehension. The room goes still again. Not empty. Waiting. Dr. Hale exhales slowly, adjusting his stance, forcing control back into his body. I appreciate the warning, he says. But he doesn't leave. He steps closer. That's his answer. Curiosity wins. It always does. Proceed, he says. I close my eyes. And for a moment, I hesitate. Not for me. For him. Then I reach. Not with my hands. With everything else. His mind opens slower than Destiny's did. Humans always do. Layers. Barriers. Noise. But once I'm in. And everything spills. Memory hits first. Sharp. Disjointed. A childhood room. Fluorescent lights. The smell of antiseptic. A voice telling him to be rational. Always rational. Emotion is interference. Emotion is weakness. Then, the present. Me. Through his eyes. Not as a person. As an anomaly. A subject. Something to be understood, reduced, controlled. And beneath that, fear. Cold. Coiled. What if we're not the highest form of intelligence? I push deeper. Not violently. Just further than he expects. And that's when it happens. The connection flips. Not one way anymore. He feels me. Fully. Not filtered. Not reduced. Everything. The stars. The distance. The vastness of where I come from. Concepts too large for language. Patterns that don't fit inside human thought. And then, her. Destiny. The pulse. The connection. What it means to not be alone. It crashes into him all at once. Too much. Way too much. He gasps, stumbling back, hands flying to his head. Stop, his voice breaks. Stop, stop. I release him instantly. The room snaps back into place. Small. Contained. Human. Dr. Hale collapses against the wall, breathing hard, eyes wide. Not with curiosity anymore. With understanding. And terror. I told you. I say quietly. He looks at me. Really looks this time. Not at a subject. Not at data. At me. What are you, he whispers. I don't answer. Because the question isn't the point. He already knows enough. And it's already too much. The hallway breathes in sterile light. Not bright. Not dark. Just enough to erase shadows and make every step feel exposed. My shoes barely touch the floor as I move, slow and careful, counting the rhythm between camera sweeps, listening for the soft click of doors down the corridor. The pulse is stronger here. Still faint, but no longer a rumor. It tugs at me, a thin thread wrapped around my ribs, pulling me forward with every step. I press my hand to my chest, steadying my breath, letting that rhythm guide me instead of panic. I'm close. I don't say his name out loud. I don't need to. I feel him. A flicker behind my thoughts. A warmth buried under layers of distance, and something else, something cold and artificial, like interference. They're doing something to him. My stomach twists. I keep moving. A corner. Then another. The building folds in on itself like a maze designed to forget its own shape. Doors line the walls, numbered, unmarked, sealed. Some hum softly, a low electrical whisper that makes my teeth ache. I pause at an intersection, flattening myself against the wall. Footsteps. Measured. Approaching. I close my eyes and reach. The pulse answers, faint, but immediate. Left. I don't question it. I slip into the adjacent corridor just as two agents pass the opening, their shadows gliding across the floor where I stood seconds ago. My breath stays locked in my chest until their footsteps fade. Okay. I whisper to myself, barely audible. Okay, keep going. My phone vibrates. The sound slices through the silence like a blade. I freeze. For a second, I don't move at all, like if I stay perfectly still, the sound will undo itself. It buzzes again. My heart jumps into my throat. I fumble it out of my pocket, hands shaking, ready to silence it. And then I see the screen. Unknown number. I hesitate. Every instinct screams at me not to answer. This is a trap. It has to be. But something else, quieter, deeper, pushes back. The pulse shifts. Not stronger. Sharper. Like it's reacting. Like it knows. I swallow hard and answer. Hello. Silence. Then, a man's voice. Low. Controlled. But not empty. Destiny James. My blood runs cold. I glance down the hallway, pulse spiking. Who is this? A pause. Not long. Just enough to feel deliberate. My name is Dr. Hale. The name means nothing to me. But the way he says it. Like it should. Where did you get this number? I demand, keeping my voice low but sharp. We've been observing you, he says. Of course they have. My grip tightens around the phone. If this is about Rory. It is. The interruption is clean. Precise. No hesitation. My heart stutters. Where is he? Another pause. I hear something in the background. Distant, muffled. Machinery, maybe. A door. I can't tell. He's alive, Dr. Hale says. The words hit like oxygen flooding back into my lungs. I close my eyes for a second, relief crashing into me so hard it almost knocks me off balance. Then let him go. I whisper, the words trembling despite me. Just let him go. Silence. Not empty this time. Heavy. Like something is shifting on the other end of the line. I'm going to, he says. My eyes snap open. What? I'm letting him go. The hallway feels unreal for a second, like the walls have moved farther away, like gravity has loosened its grip. You're lying, I say immediately. I don't even think about it. You have to be. I'm not. There's something different in his voice now. Not authority. Not control. Something fractured. I've seen what he is, he continues. Or rather, what he allows someone to see. A chill runs down my spine. You don't understand what you're dealing with, I say. I understand enough, he replies quietly. Enough to know we were wrong. The pulse flares. Sharp. Urgent. My breath catches. What did you do to him? I ask. A beat. Nothing irreversible, he says. But we've been studying him. Studying. The word burns. He told me something. Dr. Hale continues. Before I initiated contact. My chest tightens. I know exactly what he's talking about. He warned me, he says, that there would be no going back. Another pause. He was right. The words settle into me like something heavy and real. What changed? I ask. I don't know why. Maybe I need to hear it. Maybe I need to know this isn't another trick. On the other end of the line, I hear him exhale. I felt it, he says. Just that. Nothing more. But it's enough. You felt him, I whisper. Yes. A longer silence this time. Then, quieter. And he let me feel you. My heart stops. What? Your connection, he says. It's not theoretical. It's not an anomaly we can isolate. His voice tightens slightly. It's real. I swallow, my grip loosening just a little. Where is he? I ask again, softer now. Another pause. Then, You're closer than you think. My pulse spikes. What does that mean? I can't say more, he replies. There are others monitoring. But I've already initiated the release protocol. Release. The word feels fragile, like it could break if I touch it too hard. Why are you helping me? I ask. He doesn't answer right away. When he does, his voice is quieter than before. Because if we keep him, he says, we won't be studying him. A beat. We'll be destroying something we don't understand. The pulse flares again. Stronger. Closer. My breath catches. Destiny James, Dr. Hale says, and for the first time, my name doesn't sound like a file in his mouth. It sounds human. You need to be ready. For what? For what happens when he's free, he says. They won't stop. I nod, even though he can't see me. I know. A pause. Then, there's a service corridor 2 turns ahead of you. It leads to sublevel 2. Use it. My eyes flick down the hallway. 2 turns. Left. Then right. The pulse aligns with it instantly. Like it's confirming. Like it's guiding me there. Why are you telling me this? I ask. Because you're already inside, he says simply. My breath hitches. Go, he adds. Before someone else notices. The line clicks. Dead. I lower the phone slowly, my mind racing, heart pounding. He's letting Rory go. Or at least, he's trying. And I'm already here. Already moving. Already part of it. The pulse surges again. Stronger than it's ever been. Right ahead. I take a step forward. Then another. And this time, I'm not just following it. I'm running toward him. The night doesn't feel like night out here. It feels like something unfinished pretending to be calm. Wind threads through the trees in slow, uncertain breaths, brushing against skin like a question that never quite lands. The sky above is vast and indifferent, scattered with distant fire that refuses to blink away. Every star looks like it's remembering something it lost the right to hold. And in the middle of it all, us. Destiny James stands beside me, still catching her breath from everything that came before, as if the world hasn't quite decided whether to accept her escape as real. Her fingers are still linked with mine, not tightly, not desperately, but with a kind of quiet insistence, like letting go would mean forgetting how to exist at all. The pulse between us doesn't fade. It settles. Not a storm anymore. Something steadier, deeper, like a river learning the shape of its own course after breaking through stone. They're going to come back, she says softly. Not fear, not panic, just truth spoken carefully, like she's placing glass on a table and trusting it won't shatter. They always do, I reply. A pause. The wind shifts. Destiny glances toward the dark line of trees beyond the clearing, her expression tightening slightly. Then we don't stay still. There's something new in her voice now. Not the uncertainty I remember from the facility. Not the shock of discovery. Something sharpened. Something awake in a different way. You're changing, I say quietly. She lets out a breath that almost becomes a laugh. So are you. I don't deny it. Because she's right. What passed between us inside that place didn't end when the doors opened. It didn't even begin there. It only revealed what had already been waiting beneath everything. Buried, restrained, mislabeled by people who thought naming something meant owning it. The connection isn't a line anymore. It's architecture. We start walking. Not away from anything. Just forward. The grass bends softly beneath our steps, dew clinging to the edges of our movement like the world is trying to remember us. Every sound feels amplified out here. The distant hum of a highway, the whisper of branches, the faint electrical echo still lingering in my senses from the facility we left behind. Destiny breaks the silence first. What did they do to you? She asks. I don't answer immediately. Not because I don't know. Because there isn't a clean way to say it. They tried to understand me. I finally say. That's not what I asked. I glance at her. They tried to contain what they couldn't measure. I continue. Same thing they always do when something doesn't fit. Her grip tightens slightly around my hand. What about you? She asks. What did it do to you? That question lands differently. It didn't do anything to me. I say. It showed me what I already was. A quiet passes between us. Destiny slows her steps, turning slightly toward me. And what are you? You know what I am to you. I say softly. Her breath catches. Because she does. Even if she doesn't fully understand it yet. You said we decide what happens next, she says. Yes. So what happens next? The question hangs between us like a suspended breath. I step closer. We stop running like anomalies. I say. We stop reacting like subjects in someone else's equation. And if they keep coming, she asks. Then they learn, I say quietly, that not everything meant to be studied is meant to be survived. Destiny exhales. So what happens next? She asks again. We stop being something they can take. A pause settles. Then let's make sure they never get that chance again, she says. The pulse answers. Bright, alive, unbreakable. And together, we step forward into the night. The wind feels different when you stop running. Not gentler, not kinder, just aware. Like the world finally notices you've decided to stand still inside it instead of fleeing its edges. We move through the trees now instead of away from them, branches parting reluctantly, as if they're not sure whether we're supposed to be here or already gone. The forest hums with a low, living tension, every leaf carrying the faint memory of alarms that haven't caught up to us yet. Destiny James walks beside me in silence, but it isn't empty silence. It's layered, full of thought she doesn't need to speak to make real. The pulse between us has changed again. It no longer feels like a connection being maintained. It feels like a language being learned in real time. She glances at me briefly. It's still there, she says. I nod once. It won't leave. That doesn't sound comforting. It isn't meant to be. A faint smile touches her mouth anyway, like she's choosing not to let fear define the shape of her breathing anymore. We emerge from the trees into a shallow slope overlooking a wide stretch of dark land. Distant lights scattered like fallen fragments of another world. Civilization, stretched thin and unaware, blinking in its sleep. Destiny stops at the edge of the slope. For a moment, she just looks. Not at anything specific. Not at anything she can name. Just the idea of distance itself. They built everything like it was permanent, she says quietly. They always do, I reply. But nothing is. That lands between us with a different weight than before. Not revelation. Confirmation. She turns toward me now, fully, and I notice something new in her expression. Not confusion anymore. Not shock. Choice. You said we're not anomalies, she says. Yes. Then what are we? The question again. But it's evolving. It's no longer about identity. It's about direction. I take a slow breath, letting the pulse settle into something steadier beneath both of us. We're what happens when control fails to define the outcome, I say. She studies me for a moment, like she's measuring whether that answer is too large to carry. Then she nods. Okay, she says simply. No resistance. No collapse into doubt. Just acceptance of something she hasn't fully unpacked yet. That tells me more about her than anything else ever has. A distant sound threads through the air behind us. Not loud, but intentional. Destiny stiffens slightly. I feel it too. An interruption in the wider pattern, like something artificial forcing its way back into a space that had temporarily forgotten it existed. They're tracking again, she says. Yes. Faster than before? Yes. She exhales through her nose, steadying herself. Of course they are. We don't move yet. There's no immediate need. Distance is still on our side. But not for long. Destiny looks down at her hands for a moment, flexing her fingers slightly like she's trying to understand what part of her still belongs to the version of her that was inside that facility. Back there, she says quietly. When I reached you, I didn't know what I was doing. You did it anyway. That's the part that scares me, she admits. I turn toward her fully. The wind shifts again. This time it feels like it's listening. You think it should have been impossible, I say. I think it should have been controlled, she corrects. A pause. Then I step closer. Not to overwhelm. To stabilize. The pulse between us tightens gently, like it recognizes the need for grounding. You're still thinking like they taught you to think, I say. Her eyes narrow slightly, but not defensively. More like she's examining the shape of that statement from all angles. Maybe, she says. But I also remember what I felt. A quiet moment stretches. Then I nod. That's the part they can't remove. Something in her expression softens at that. Not relief. Recognition. Behind us, far in the direction we came from, a faint glow begins to rise between the trees. Not fire. Not natural light. Something colder. More structured. Destiny sees it too. They found the corridor, she says. They were always going to. She turns back toward the slope, watching the scattered lights below. So what now? She asks again, but differently this time. Less uncertain. More operational. I follow her gaze. The world feels larger from here. Not physically. Perceptually. as if distance itself has become more honest. We stop treating this like escape, I say, and start treating it like what? A pause. The pulse between us steadies. Then I answer. Beginning. She lets that sit for a moment, then nods once. Okay, she says again. But this time it carries weight. Agreement. Direction. Decision. We begin walking along the ridge. Not fast. Not slow. Intentional. Behind us, the glow intensifies slightly, threading through the forest like an idea refusing to stay contained. Destiny glances back once, then forward again. They won't stop, she says. No. Her hand finds mine again, without hesitation this time. No searching. No uncertainty. Just continuity. Then we don't either, she says. The pulse responds immediately. Stronger. Clearer. No longer just connection. Alignment. Ahead of us, the slope descends toward the distant lights, toward roads, toward systems still pretending they understand the world they've built. Behind us, the facility begins to wake fully. And between us, something new holds steady enough to change the direction of everything it touches. We keep walking. The world feels different when you stop believing you're allowed to disappear. Not softer, not safer, just more honest, like every surface has finally stopped pretending it was built for anything other than consequence. We move down from the ridge into the lowlands where the wind loses its sharpness and becomes something quieter, more intimate. The kind of wind that brushes against skin like it knows your name, but is still deciding whether to say it out loud. Destiny James walks beside me with a steadiness that didn't exist in her before. Not because fear is gone, because it has been reorganized, placed somewhere it no longer controls her movements. The pulse between us is no longer a thread. It is structure. It is rhythm that persists even when attention drifts. It is presence without effort. We pass through an abandoned service road, cracked asphalt overtaken by thin grass that refuses to stay suppressed. The night air carries distant hums of systems too far away to be visible, but still close enough to be felt in the bones. Behind us, the facility is no longer a place. It is an intention, something waking fully now that denial is no longer available. They'll expand the search grid, Destiny says quietly. Her voice is calm, but there's something underneath it now. Not anxiety, not anticipation, calculation. Yes, I answer. They'll classify us as containment breach. Yes. She nods once, like she's confirming something she already suspected. Good, she says. That makes me glance at her. Not because it surprises me, because it confirms her shift. There is a difference between being pursued and being defined by pursuit. She is crossing that line. We continue forward. The road bends gently, leading us toward a distant cluster of lights that flicker with human inconsistency. Houses. Infrastructure. Life continuing without awareness that something underneath its assumptions has changed shape. Destiny slows slightly. I used to think everything important would feel dramatic, she says. I wait. She looks out at the lights ahead. But this just feels inevitable. The word settles between us. Inevitable. Not heavy. Not light. Accurate. We reach a small overpass where the road crosses a narrow river. The water below reflects fractured versions of the sky, breaking the stars into pieces that never quite align with themselves. Destiny stops at the railing. I stop beside her. For a moment, neither of us speaks. The pulse between us slows slightly, as if even it understands this is a moment meant for observation rather than direction. I can feel them searching, she says finally. Yes. It's different now, she continues. It's not just pursuit. It's awareness. Like they've started realizing the shape of what they lost. I nod once. They won't understand it. I say. They don't need to understand it, she replies. They just need to measure it. A pause. Then she turns toward me. Can they? She asks. The question is simple, but it is not naive. It is testing the boundary between what was and what is becoming. No, I say. Not immediately. Not hesitantly. Certain. Something in her expression softens slightly at that. Not relief. Confirmation. We stand there for a while longer. The river moves beneath us without concern for what is being decided above it. Then Destiny exhales slowly. I don't feel like I escaped, she says. I look at her. What do you feel like? She hesitates, searching for language that hasn't fully formed yet. Like I stepped out of something that didn't realize it was holding me, she says finally. I nod. That's closer. She lets out a quiet sound that might almost be a laugh. Comforting, she says again. But this time it carries something different. Acceptance layered over irony. We leave the overpass and continue down the road. The further we go, the more the world opens around us. Not dramatically, subtly, like breathing becoming easier without noticing it was restricted before. Destiny walks closer now than before. Not because she is afraid of distance. Because she no longer treats proximity as uncertain. The pulse between us adjusts accordingly. It does not pull. It aligns. Rory, she says after a while. Yes. If they keep escalating, what happens when they stop trying to contain us and start trying to replicate what we are? The question hangs in the air longer than the others. Not because it is difficult, because it is future-facing. I consider it carefully, then answer. They already will, I say. Destiny nods slowly. Of course they will, she murmurs. There is no shock in her voice. Only recognition of pattern. We walk on. Eventually, the road leads us toward a small settlement. Dim lights. Quiet streets. A place that does not yet know it has become adjacent to something larger than geography. We stop at the edge of it. Not hidden. Not exposed. Simply present. Destiny looks at the houses for a long time. What do we do with places like this? She asks. The question is not about strategy. It is about responsibility. I don't know yet. I say honestly. She nods. That's the first real answer I've heard all night, she says. I glance at her. She is not smiling, but there is warmth in her expression now that wasn't there at the beginning. We move into the settlement slowly. Not to hide, not to announce, just to pass through. The world continues around us unaware. Lights flicker. Windows glow. Distant televisions cast soft shifting colors into living rooms where nothing has changed yet. But something has, even if no one can name it. Destiny's hand brushes mine again, not seeking reassurance, maintaining continuity. I think I understand something now, she says quietly. What? She looks ahead as we walk. That being seen isn't the same as being known, she says. I consider that. Then nod. Yes. She exhales softly. And being known, she continues, is not something they can force. No. We pass a small intersection where streetlights cast overlapping pools of pale light onto empty pavement. For a moment, everything feels suspended between directions. Then Destiny stops. So do I. She turns to face me fully. The pulse between us steadies again, as if anticipating something. I don't think I'm the same person I was when I left that place, she says. You're not, I reply. She nods slowly. I don't think you are either. A quiet acknowledgement passes between us. Not transformation. Continuation beyond former limits. Destiny looks at me for a long moment, then says softly, what are we going to become? The question is no longer fear-based. It is authorship-based. I take a breath. Not because I need time. Because the answer deserves presence. We are going to become something that cannot be reduced, I say. She listens without interrupting. Something that doesn't exist inside their definitions. I continue. Something that doesn't collapse under observation. A pause. Then I add. Something that chooses itself. Silence follows. Not empty. Full. Destiny closes her eyes briefly. When she opens them again, something in her expression has settled completely. Okay, she says. One word. Final in its simplicity. We continue walking. The settlement passes around us like a dream that doesn't yet realize it is being remembered differently. Eventually, we reach the far side. Open land again. Fields stretching outward into darkness, softened by distance. The sky above is wider here. Less interrupted. Destiny stops again, looking upward. This feels like standing at the edge of something, she says. Yes. Not the end, she clarifies. No. Then what? I look at the sky with her. Not searching for meaning. Acknowledging scale. Threshold, I say. She repeats it quietly. Threshold. The word settles into her like something familiar she has only just remembered. Behind us, far away now, faint signals begin to stir again. Not alarms. Not pursuit. Coordination. Destiny feels it too. They're reorganizing, she says. Yes. Then this doesn't end. No, I say. She turns slightly toward me. Her hand finds mine again. This time firmly. Good, she says. There is no fear in it. Only readiness. We stand there together at the edge of open land, beneath a sky that refuses to explain itself. with a world behind us that has begun rewriting its understanding of what escaped it. The pulse between us is no longer just connection. It is agreement. It is continuity. It is the beginning of something that does not require permission to exist. Destiny James looks forward. "I'm ready," she says quietly. I look at her, and for the first time since all of this began, there is no fracture in the answer. "Then we continue," I say, and together we step beyond the threshold, not away from what we were, not toward what they expect, but into what we decide is real enough to survive being named. And behind us, the world begins to follow its own echo into something it does not yet understand, but will.
Epilogue. I still miss him every single day. Not in a way that fades or softens, but in a way that lingers, quiet, constant, woven into everything I do. I crave the memory of him, the warmth of his touch, the softness of his lips, the way the world seemed to fall away when I looked into those deep violet eyes of his. Sometimes, I swear I can still feel him near me, like a shadow made of light, like something just beyond reach but never truly gone. He'll come back to Earth one day. I know it with a certainty that lives deeper than doubt, deeper than distance, deeper than time itself. And when he does,